All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Break the Rules stream. I am your host, Lev Polyakov at Lev Po on Twitter. And we are here today, of course, with the great and powerful Giovanni Pennacchietti. No Fez today. What is up with the lack of
Well,
Fez?
I don't know. I don't know. I sometimes I break it out. For depends on the topic. I mean, when politics, I want to shelter the Fez from politics. But I mean, if you want, I could probably.
All right, well, we got to play the Fez game next time you wear the Fez, where we guess what is under Gio's Fez, and whoever comes
Well,
closest gets a prize. But anyway, we are talking today about liberalism, the future of liberalism, as well as, you could say, institutions and things of that nature. And we have two amazing guests here joining us along with Gio. We got Angel Eduardo, New York City-based writer, musician, photographer, designer, member of the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism fair, which I've been a big fan of for a long time. And we have the great and the powerful with I assure you it's... I don't know. I kind of want to keep up the kayfabe that this is actually a green screen that you are behind because it looks too good to be true. And can you tell the people where exactly this is?
Sure. I'm in Costa Rica. I left California in September with my wife and baby, and we live out here, same building as my parents. And yeah, so that's real, and I can assure you it's real because this tan is real. I was as white as you were, Lev, before, and now I'm black. I'm a black man, and I can, I'm coming out.
Yeah.
And I'm black.
Well, Gio may be pale, but he's like official. Gio, you're officially a black man, right? Because you're Italian.
Black,
is that the
Italian X, black. That is.
Yeah.
Sorry. Look, Lev, you're Jewish. I'm Jewish. We were the original blacks. We were. Everyone hated us before them, and then all of a sudden they took all our glory, and then like, oh, we just get you control the world. That's all we have. You control the world. Yeah, but like, what about the hatred you guys used to have? Like, I keep hearing about anti-Semitism. I don't really experience it other than from other Jews. So,
No, Jews tend to be especially like
Israelites. They say
them too. But I do find that Jews, as far as like the leftist Jews, tend to be some of the most anti-Semitic people of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But before we keep going, I just want to also say an intro to Josh Lekach.
They get to
so
do it.
yes, so patreon.com/wrongop. You are the head, the founder, the curator, the guru of the Wrong Opinion podcast, which I highly recommend everybody to check out. I'm going to post it in the chat as well. And before we get started with this conversation about the institutions, I want to ask, starting with Angel and then Josh, just why you find yourself to be in the place where you are today as far as how you perceive the world, and then ask you about... the big question, whether you think that liberalism can survive, but also how you would define liberalism. So there we go. Let's start with Angel.
Yeah, no pressure, right?
Yes.
How I find myself where I am. I have trouble shutting up. I've always been that kid that talked back to his parents. So I just kind of keep that same energy. When something doesn't make sense, I say so. Or when it doesn't make sense to me anyway, I say so, and I ask questions, and I try to make sense myself and figure out what the hell's going on. And lately I've added the kind of goal for myself of trying to help others make sense, or, have us make sense together. That's kind of my whole deal. And approach other people with curiosity and compassion rather than enmity and hatred and venom. So what do I think liberalism is? I mean, I think it's the opposite of, obviously it's the opposite of illiberalism, like in terms of an openness to ideas, an openness to inquiry, an openness to experience, and a general kind of desire to move more in that direction than in the opposite direction. That's sort of my off the cuff kind of idea of what I would consider liberalism there. And what was the last question?
The last question was, well, we talked about liberalism and where it came from, and well, I guess this kind of cements exactly the way that I want this conversation to go to, as far as what exactly defines liberalism, where you are, and what kind of battle do you see raging on right now between the various sides. What is the battle about in your mind?
I would say that the majority of the issues that we're facing are the result of miscommunication. People misunderstanding one another and also misunderstanding themselves, misunderstanding what it is that they really want and how best to actually try to get those things. And also, I think people underestimating just how much we really need one another in order to foster a productive, creative, entrepreneurial, successful society, this social project that we have. I think that's really the key for me.
I definitely agree with that. But the ultimate question then, going back to the original topic, would be, do you see this liberal society as being salvageable, as being something that it is possible to get back to? And then the other question would be, and Josh did a recent episode about this, is it worth going back? What is it that we are going back to? Which kind of brings us to the original question of what is liberalism, which you define more by what it isn't, but that still leaves that gap open.
No, I mean, liberalism is an openness to ideas. It's kind of the idea of freedom and freedom of inquiry and freedom of experience and freedom of expression and openness to expression and openness to experience and openness to divergent views. It's generally kind of, let's take it all in and work it out and see what happens. That's my conception of it. And I don't really think that there's a there to go back to. I don't think we necessarily left. I think that it's easy to get lost in the weeds, but overall, many of the problems we're facing, many of the arguments we're having are kind of champagne problems. They're kind of champagne arguments. It's kind of, we're quibbling about these relatively small things because so much of the bigger things are kind of handled or accepted, right? And now that doesn't mean that there aren't problems that are serious. There are. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't worry about things. We should. But for me, when I zoom it out into like the larger context, it feels to me very similar to, when people are complaining about or getting into a rage about Halloween costumes, that to me signifies that everything else that's going on in their life is pretty much okay, right? Because they have the time to focus on something so relatively small. I feel like we're kind of in concentric circle versions of that same dynamic. So
I definitely see an aspect of that as well. And I want to get Josh's opinion on this, but to play devil's advocate against that notion, I would say that there are certain things that if only you had a time machine when you're living in a dystopia, you would say, you know what, I can go back to this time and prevent this from happening, even if the people back then wouldn't really see it as being that much of a big deal. And I think that's the question in a lot of people's minds. Even those who are not seeing exactly the dystopian vision that others may still be thinking like, are we getting inching closer and closer to that? And that's what I think makes people frustrated. But Josh, let me know what you think.
Can you ask me the question again? Just because that was like a lot of stuff going on. I agree with his definition of liberalism, or the origins of liberalism, but it's kind of spiraled out of control after that. So just repeat the question. But there's one thing I did want to mention, like with people complaining about trivial stuff. Yeah, obviously that's happening. It's happening because people have way too much time on their hands, because we are in the greatest era of comfort in history. We have an overabundance of comfort. So right. People who typically would have never paid attention to politics or anything like that are paying attention. And since most people are stupid, which is just that's just how it is. No, on any side, I'm not even picking a side. Most people are stupid. They're going to gravitate towards the easy things to be outraged about, regardless of side. So I agree with him on that. But there are massive problems going on today. I'm not even talking about like.
Oh, and this is YouTube, so we have to be careful about the certain words. We got to use Creole when it comes to the certain whatchamacallit.
No. I wasn't gonna say any R words or N words or anything. Don't worry.
I think you could say the R word though. That's on YouTube.
No.
Retarded?
I mean
Yeah,
the Backstreet Boys World Tour. That's what I call the thing. That's going on right now. Still, I mean, it's kind of going into a closing right now. But you never know what the algorithm.
I was gonna say that some weeks we might be on the brink of war with Russia, which isn't true. It's not gonna happen. And people might think like that's the big topic of today. It's not. I think that especially when you have a family or you're starting to have a family, you start kind of becoming a little bit more overprotective. And I think that it's called for just because right now the amount of information that is being pumped into every household daily, it overshadows the amount of information people used to get in a whole year. I mean, it's a constant stream. It's a constant flow of. It is an info war. I mean, Alex Jones is right. That's a perfect name for anything, really. It's really relevant and it's true. It's again, regardless of any side, you're at war every day, and there is direct attacks on your kids for some reason. I don't know why people maybe get off on it, but they and I think that the only way to have a stable society is to have a stable brand new generation coming up, and it's kind of impossible with the constant stream of attacks. So I'm not of the mindset that we should be worried about what the M&Ms are doing if they have a new costume, or if there's a woman who was a man or that's an M&M, like that's on them. I who cares? I really don't. You shouldn't even be buying those anyways because they're garbage for you. They're made to lower your testosterone levels. We should be.
It's true.
No,
and
like all modern food, all processed foods do that. They all do that.
They lower testosterone.
Yes.
Oh yeah, microplastics. Yep.
Well, also that, but they do. You want to know my source?
I mean, if you say Alex Jones,
no source. Okay, let's go. But ask the question. Did I answer the question actually, or you're the boss?
Partly you answered it, but partly you did not. So the question is whether liberalism is something that you think is salvageable, but also would you agree with Angel's definition of liberalism?
It sounds right to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it sounds right to me. I think like the tenets of liberalism are things we should revere. I mean, like free speech is a relatively new concept. It didn't really exist throughout history, although I do romanticize about parts of ancient Rome. I mean, a lot of their structures are still standing. Their roads are better than Pittsburgh's. So there's a lot of things to revere about the past. Beauty used to matter. All of these things. There's a lot of things to revere about the past, but especially something like freedom of speech, which I guess would be a liberal ideal. That's something that we should try to salvage and save. But it's, again, I mean, that's one of the things right now on the chopping block.
Yeah.
But the question I think here is, even if it's something that we want to save, I think there's an echo somewhere. But anyway, even if there is something that we want to save, number one, can it be saved? And number two, when we're talking about things beyond just free speech, the question is, well, what do people do with the freedom that they are given, and what it is that we're trying to preserve? So beyond just the ability to freely speak, which I think is extremely important, but I think there's a frustration people feel that nobody's addressing, or very few people are addressing, what then? What after people get the opportunity to speak?
Well, I mean, like I said, most people are dumb, but still they're human beings and they should be able to express themselves. I mean, a lot of people are mad at Joe Rogan for misinformation or something. Or the N-word. And honestly, like, again, it's just don't listen to him. Like, who cares? And the reason people are gravitating towards him is because the institutions failed. The institutions had the trust of the people, and now they don't. And now they're mad. Well, it's your fault. The mask is off. We know what you guys want to do. We know how you want to sway us. It's not our fault. We don't trust you. So is it worth saving? I was kind of saying this today on my podcast because I saw the topic of this and it got me thinking, and I couldn't not talk about it. I think that it is worth saving, but not in the way you think. I think it's worth saving, and starting with the roots, like the roots meaning, if you decide to have a family, which I suggest everyone does, I think you bring a whole new meaning to your life. It's absolutely amazing. It's unfathomable. I can't describe it to people who haven't done it. It's just, you got to do it. The best thing we could do is raise the next generation to be very strong and not pussies. I mean, even if it's a girl, she shouldn't be a pussy, and she should. I would raise a girl differently than a guy, obviously, but I think that's the solution. I mean, even households with both parents, the dad is probably just a consumer. He doesn't know how to he doesn't know how to be a masculine figure that his son should look up to. I mean, that's just what we are now. It's just massive consumers. Our identity is what we consume. There's nothing that we are really teaching the next generation. We're not teaching them skills. We're not teaching them even like how to balance their bank account or checkbook, or make food or go hunting or defend yourself. People don't know how to do anything. So I think we're going about it the wrong way. Like, a lot of conservatives nowadays go to complain to school boards thinking, oh, this is going to change something. But even if it does, it's like 10 years later. Your kid is out of school and the damage is done. So I don't think it's worth saving in the sense that we should try to lobby our politicians that, should in theory listen to us, but they don't. And then we're like, why aren't you listening? We're going to vote you out of office and put someone else in. Great. That's going to fix anything. I think that we should raise the next generation to be very strong. I think that's the solution. And then we build anew from the ashes of America and make America 2.0 or something. Maybe I'm crazy and stupid and wrong, but that's kind of what I'm thinking.
So by the ashes, you're talking about accelerationism in a way. And I'm not saying that you're accelerationist, but it does sound that what you predict is going to happen.
I don't know, Lev. That's kind of a misappropriation of the term, but.
Well, what would you say accelerationism is? Just so we define the terms properly here.
Well, the idea you're putting forth is that you want to sort of like what did the Marxists used to say, accentuate the contradictions, where you're sort of accelerating the conditions of decay in order to eminentize collapse. But accelerationism,
and that's why I said
from the Nick Land.
But that's why I said that Josh is not an accelerationist, but he is somebody, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're somebody who's predicting that this is the way things are going to go, so you're preparing ahead of time. Now, Angel, I know that you are fighting the good fight along with the people at FAIR, having to do with going into the school boards and talking about all of this stuff. And the question I have for you is, based on what Josh was talking about, is this just one of those things where you want to put in as much effort as possible and hope it works? Is it something that you're absolutely sure is going to work? Or is there still a part of you that agrees with Josh that this is just delaying the inevitable? Or can the inevitable be avoided?
Well, by definition, no. The inevitable cannot be avoided. But I'm not sure that I share the worldview. I mean, there's a lot of catastrophizing and there's a lot of kind of apocalypticism going around from all directions, and I don't share it. I think that there are definitely serious problems, and we could always destroy ourselves. That's always been true. That always will be true, is that none of this is guaranteed. But I definitely subscribe to the Steven Pinker kind of point of view that, if you zoom out progress is always moving in the right direction. Things are always moving in the right direction. Right now is the best, most prosperous, healthiest time to be alive. And that will probably always be true. And it's been true no matter where you stop on the, it's way better than, no matter where you are on the timeline, it's way better to be there than 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years before that.
I'd argue with ancient Rome, there was a time when it was better, and then it became worse. Geo, yes, it did. You know that.
Well, sure,
Well,
yeah.
in the end, of course.
That's also true. Like today, if you live in a war zone, your life sucks and it's awful.
Yeah.
But I'm talking,
think-
I'm speaking.
We're talking about the
generally
West.
zoomed out, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about the West.
Right?
No, even even in the places where there's still terrible suffering, it's a different kind of suffering than you would have gotten 100 years ago.
Well,
I
hunger
think
has
that-
been virtually eliminated, right? People are not going as hungry as they
Depends on
did
where-
before.
Yeah, I mean, sure, it depends. And when you zoom in a little bit, things start to, you see the bar kind of in a much more jagged way. But I'm talking about the zoomed out view of just overall, it's an upward motion, and that's good. That doesn't mean that there are no problems. It doesn't mean that there's nothing to do, there's nothing to fix or nothing to worry about. But it does mean that we seem to be stumbling our way into progress despite ourselves often. Now, zooming back in, of course, there are problems and there are a lot of ways that we can screw ourselves up, and we should be mindful of those things. But I think having a general kind of, optimism or idealism about things is helpful. It's helpful to contextualize things in a way where you understand that, two things have always been true. Right now is the best time to be alive, generally speaking. And things are, generally speaking, getting better and better, always. And everyone always thinks they're getting worse. Everyone always thinks we're living in the worst possible time. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket, et cetera, et cetera. Those two things are always true at the same time.
Especially all of you online.
I don't know. I disagree.
Do you think people have more meaning in their life today than, let's say 100 years ago or 200 years ago? Like the average person in the United States, do you think they're walking around like feeling like they have more meaning in their lives and they're more fulfilled now than they were 100 years ago, 200 years ago?
I guess it depends on what you mean by meaning.
Because I don't really think happiness is like the ultimate thing to attain. You need to have a little bit of suffering. You need to have a little bit of all the feelings, but for some reason now people are on the hunt for constant needs of happiness and forms of cheap dopamine hits. I think
feel like that's always been true too. I think that's always been true too.
Well, but the difference is now it's actually accessible on demand, and we don't know what to do with it. Yeah. And I think that now, I mean, look, I'm not a religious person, but I like one of the things you asked was, I forgot. But one of the things I was going to say was that I used to be way more liberal. I mean, I'm 35 now. I used to be, I considered myself libertarian, live and let live, all of that. Live and let live just doesn't work. Because if you want to go hide in a forest or something, eventually someone's going to come knocking and being like, hey, that's mine. You can't, or you can't do this. You can't live off the grid. It's not healthy for you. So eventually someone's going to come and, kick you off your own land. It's going to happen. But I was more liberal when I was younger. And, I thought like the do what feels good thing is fine. But a society as a whole cannot function properly when that is the thing that people are all striving for to either attain or achieve or whatever. We need.
That's the thing, though. Sorry to cut you off.
No. Yeah.
But to contextualize it a little bit more, what you're saying, it may be true, but to what Angel was saying, is this an issue which is smaller, which is like within all these various details that are worked out in the process of us going into a more, a better society?
It doesn't seem like...
Or is this the issue? Because that's a big difference, right?
Well, that's
right,
what
Angel?
I mean, Lev. You have to realize that sorry, Josh, you go first, and then I'll... have
Well, I was
opinions
just
feel.
gonna say, like, the things I talk about seem kind of fringe. Like, it doesn't seem like the masses ever really want to um, even have this sort of conversation. Like porn, as an example, there's like an overabundance of porn you can get, and it's, first of all, people think it's free. It's not. You're pretty much giving away the fire in your belly as a young man. I mean, you're like giving away your drive, you know, whatever. That's I don't want to talk about that. But I'm just I'm using it as an example.
Read
There's
the
like
last
an
psychiatrist book, Sadly Porn, to learn more. There's this great book that just came out by the last psychiatrist. He's an actual psychiatrist. He had a blog called The Last Psychiatrist, where he wrote this book about pornography and its effects on society.
The thing is like, people, it doesn't even seem like it's a topic that's on anyone's mind to begin with, which to me it's a little bit troubling. I mean,
well, people are writing books about it, so
yeah, but that doesn't mean people are reading it.
Well, no,
only internet schizos read this guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, like people like me.
But it does, but gentlemen, it does go back to the question of micro versus macro. And by the way, Josh, I think you have the echo going on because you're not wearing any headphones, so I hear myself. I think it's from you. I'm not sure, or it could be from Angel. Either
Yeah,
one.
I'm not wearing buds
come to
either.
your computer.
Yes, I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter.
Well, I have a point, Lev. I mean,
Right after I make the point, I would love for you to make your point as well. So my hashtag geo harassment. No, my point is this. So if we're in a situation where we're looking at pornography or we're looking at any societal ill, the question we have to ask ourselves is, are these growing pains in a society that's progressing to something better, or are these things we're talking about the things that are going to upend and completely destroy the society, or maybe in a lighter way, turn the society into some third world hellscape? So that's the big question that I think people are not really looking at, because either people say it's all doom and gloom or people say it's nothing, but how do we know whether it's one or the other? So Angel, let me know what you think.
I don't think it is one or the other. I think those are both unreasonable options. I don't think that we are on the brink of collapse. I don't think that we're anywhere near that sort of thing. That doesn't mean that it isn't a danger. That doesn't mean that we can't end up doing it. We can, but there's a certain amount of kind of collective negligence that is required that I don't think we've reached yet. Now, and again, I always want to reiterate this, that none of this means that there aren't serious things to pay attention to and care about and do something about. And of course, to say, no, everything's fine, that's also ridiculous, because of course everything is not fine. There are real issues and we need to address them. It's just about being more even keeled, I guess.
I think the best way to look at it is let's just pretend we're obsolete. You're probably a millennial. I'm a millennial. We're probably around the same age. Okay, yeah, we're around the same age. Let's just pretend we're obsolete. Are you worried about the youth and the direction they're going in?
I feel like all my answers are kind of the same. Like I can see issues, right? But
like, I'm talking about
major
issues, like major issues.
There are some issues for sure. There are new issues. There are definitely things that kids today have to deal with that I didn't have to deal with. You and I didn't have to deal with, right?
No, yeah.
We went through most of school, most of our education without cell phones, right?
And
we weren't
like internet was shitty. Like you kind of had to go somewhere to use it.
It was the frontier.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you and I grew up in a place where it was like, the late 90s pretty much, when we were using the internet in any kind of reasonable way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think like when we were,
well, I was going to say that's going to have an effect, 10-year-olds with cell phones and Instagram accounts, that's going to do something, right? There's no way that it's just nothing, no big deal. No, of course it's a new thing. It's different.
I think,
and so there are concerns like that, but I also keep in mind that, my parents were worried about my generation, and people their age were like, oh, these kids don't know shit. They're paying attention to the worst possible things, right? Like I'm a musician. So I spent so many of my years kind of playing music, doing all that stuff that would be considered a ridiculous pursuit by my parents, my immigrant parents who came here from the Dominican Republic. You know, they're like, they busted their asses to work their way from, you know, living in somebody's attic to owning a home in the suburbs, right? With 4 kids, and there's 2 cars and there's a pool, you know, like they did that just through sweat. And here I am playing music and saying, I want to be an artist. You know what I mean? Like that's automatically going to be a generational thing where it's like, oh my God, like the level of privilege that they gave me just from all the work that they did.
Sure.
I cannot fathom that kind of a leap for my kids, right? Like I will never be that distant from my kids. I will never have accomplished as much as my parents did. It's almost impossible. So
why?
There are all these fundamental
just did
kind of
so much?
generational differences.
Is it they did so much? Or?
Yeah, it's like I would literally have to like, you know, join Elon Musk and like move to Mars. You know what I mean? For it to be a comparable or to like supersede what my parents did. They left their home country where they, you know, they moved somewhere that they didn't speak the language. My father basically gave up his degree and started over, right? He needed to do the education thing again, just to be able to, you know, certify himself and become a professional. My mom went through school here, learning the language and raising me and my siblings. They started out in a tiny attic and they moved slowly all the way up to a house in a really nice middle-class suburb. For me to accomplish something equivalent, I would have to become like, you know, a superstar, like a celebrity or something. I would have to do something that drastic in order for it to be a comparable accomplishment.
Well, there was a great quote by John Quincy Adams that our good friend Philip Daniel posted in the chat. I have to study politics and war so that my sons can study mathematics, commerce, and agriculture, so their sons can study poetry, painting, and music.
Yeah,
whoa.
Exactly.
That's good. But
it's progress. It's great.
go ahead, Gio. Sorry.
I think, like, to get back to the original question, I think the problem that we're haggling over is you have to look at the development of liberalism as a, I would say, metaphysical question in terms of what it does, or rather what it purports about the human subject itself. That's very unique throughout human history, is that we are sort of individuals that interact with society, and the usual dwelling places that we have that give us our own sense of subjectivity has sort of been shattered, and that rather people as individuals interact within a social network. And it's like very much from the sort of 19th century Enlightenment era to the 19th century, it's sort of that same base assumption that people have. So concepts like freedom and choice and so forth, these are all very deeply metaphysical questions in terms of how society, not just how societies govern, but also how human subjectivity is formed and the values from which we derive our sense of identity and purpose. And so people don't view it that way because, of course, liberalism, the trick is that it's purported to be like just human nature. It's basic assumption of society, and that there is a sort of line of progress that develops throughout human history, instead of a sort of cyclical model, which purports that, you know, we can progress so far and maybe the next generation will progress farther, but inevitably things come to a heed, and, you know, Oswald Spengler, so on and so forth. And that's the problem, I think, is that it's very easy to purport that liberalism is the sort of default, you know, tutorial mode position of human existence, when there is, you know, the technological capacity that Western society has developed in the time that we live in tends to mask a lot of the contradictions of a liberal system. But I think, to Josh's point, is that what we're seeing now is that those contradictions within liberalism and within liberalism's view of the human subject as basically just an atomized individual, that it's getting harder and harder to mask it with technology. We need to go to like crazy sci-fi metaverse, human battery levels of technological development in order to sort of shield the incredible lack of meaning that people have. And of course, we are materially, of course, advancing, but in terms of what advancement even means, or what progress means. For example, Lev, you mentioned human starvation. Well, it is true that materially people are no longer starving to death, and there is not cyclical famines that have existed throughout human history. But at the same token, people are more unhealthy than ever, just in a different way. So the problem with the assumption of liberal progress is that really it's just what Bap calls yeast, like Bronze Age pervert. He calls this is like yeast society, meaning that it just propagates for its own sake. That humanity is sort of a giant stomach that you satiate. You have tingles that you have to, you have to coom because of the VR anime queen.
But
is
weren't
on,
people always like
So
that in
that's
the little villages too? That would be my counter to that, because we have this assumption that everybody
what I
was
mean
living
is that
this traditional life. But
no, but that's what I mean, Lev, is that the problem with liberalism is that it metaphysically views the subject as a giant stomach and a series of erogenous zones to satiate. And so in that system, it's kind of impossible to have any, I would say, traditional notion of civic obligation or national identity, or even one's identity towards and sort of capacity for community and capacity for love towards one's community or filial piety. Those things become irrelevant because, of course, what comes with liberalism and its assumption about human nature is this sort of omnipotent managerial state that has to naturally arise from that view of the human subject. Because how are you going to administer people? You can't. It's impossible. You need a sort of technocratic overmind, if you will, to, in the absence of things like traditional religion and family structures, you need this overmind to regulate people's base desires into, somewhat more amicable desires for society to function. So, for example, if you're in a wagey cagey and you go to your, 9 to 5, or well, you don't even go to it anymore. It's work from home. Now the wagey cagey is home. So, in order to make sure that you're not going to chimp out, if you will, then you're going to have different forms of soma. You're going to have more addicting Netflix shows. You're going to have more addicting substances within food and water and so forth. And so, I'm just rambling right now.
But Angel, I'm curious what you make of Gio's conclusions here.
I think that Gio's bookshelf is much bigger than mine.
Oh, shit.
So,
Yeah, did you read all those books, or you just have them? Decoration.
I skimmed through all of those books.
Yeah.
well, I just mean
Impossible.
he seems much more philosophically well read than I am. So
Yeah, I know. That's why I asked, like, did he read them? I'm
But the question is not
I
even...
wasted a whole lot of time in university.
Yes.
No,
the question is not even so much about philosophy here as much as how much, to the best of our abilities, can we know whether the qualities that Gio attributes to human beings is something that is or is not going to be the case. And I know that's kind of a cyclical conversation because we've kind of been down this road too, but specifically with this question of meaning, whether people had meaning in the past or whether they were still like kind of like NPC-ish, still programmed to act a certain way without being aware of it, and how much is the kind of things that people are being led through today in society, especially younger people, how much is that going to make them act one way versus another? If you were to, let's say, Angel, if you were to steel man the arguments that Josh and Gio are bringing forth here as far as what may possibly happen, my next question would be, what would be the solution to that? How can we actually go about solving it instead of saying, well, maybe it's going to happen, maybe it's not going to happen? What are the things that we can do that we're not doing at the moment?
I definitely can see the point of there being a kind of spiritual crisis for people. I'm not sure how much different it is fundamentally now than 100 years ago. I can envision, a reality 100 years, 200 years ago, where the vast majority of people are religious and go to church and do the whole spiel. And there's a certain sense of meaning that is granted by, submitting yourself to those systems and structures. But I think that there's also a kind of oppressiveness to it, because there were certainly people who didn't believe. There were certainly people who were confused and had questions and felt they couldn't ask them. And then you have this kind of spiritual crisis happening within them without any way for them to voice it. And I think that's so much of the issue, is that all we have is a series of trade-offs. And so, we've in my view, done the right thing of becoming a more secular society, right? Because it's more open, it is more liberal, and it's more rejecting of nonsense, what I think is objective nonsense. But there's a trade-off, right? There's the, to reduce it just down to the individual level, right? There is a sense in which someone who gives up their religious faith or religious upbringing is giving up more than just a set of ideas. They're giving up a sense of self. They're giving up a community. They're giving up a sense of purpose. They're giving up, if they do the afterlife thing, they're giving that up, right? That now becomes at best a question mark. And all of that is going to have psychological and spiritual effects on their personality, their sense of self, all that stuff. And then they have to do a bunch of work. That's the issue, is that, I went through this. I was raised Catholic and I was a believer. And, to the extent that, that's what I was told, I believed it, and I asked too many questions and then eventually worked my way to the other side, right? I had to fill all those gaps. I had to fill that void that was created by the lies that I was told.
But I also think
it's a good thing.
You're an extraordinary individual in comparison to...
See, that's what people say. And not that I get that all the time, but people do say that, and I don't think that that's true. I don't think there's anything special about it. I think it's just the fact that I did it.
I would say there's a different...
and I don't think that... Well, sorry, but I think that part of the reason so many people don't do it is not because it's difficult and scary. I think that it's because we don't have any kind of culture that encourages it. I think we have cultures that kind of encourage the easy ways out to things. So go back to church, or become a punk, or become a goth, or become a skater, or become a jock. Those are the things that people replace that stuff with, and it doesn't work, right? So think about a 40-year-old goth. That's fucking ridiculous, right? It's
yes.
You're not 17. It doesn't make any sense. This is supposed to be a phase. You could still like the music.
Well, goth has been replaced now.
Still listen to hum.
Yeah, but all these things you're saying, Angel, they've been replaced now, I think, by being non-binary. That's the new thing, the new identity that people can assume. If they're not...
there's definitely some of that, sure. I think that, it's more complicated. I think it's difficult, and I think a lot of people are doing things without even knowing what they're doing. And I think there are people who really genuinely just feel that way and are now being given the opportunity to express that without censure. But yes, I do think that even then, your political affiliation, your tribal affiliation, your race, your quote unquote race, all those things are also in that list of traits that you try to basically form an entire self out of, and they're inadequate. All of those things are inadequate, and that's why we still feel this kind of uneasiness, this sense of spiritual crisis, even though we have these things, because they're empty. It's empty calories. You're not really getting the nutrition you want.
But is it you that's getting the nutrition? I want to go to Josh for this as well. Is it you that's getting the nutrition by yourself? Or is it you being exposed to all kinds of different advertisements, all kinds of influencers that put certain ideas in your mind?
We need the repeat diet. That's what we need.
Yeah, repeat diet, exactly. Put things in your mind of who you are, what you believe in, and to counter what you were saying about you not being an extraordinary person, I would say that people who can create the kind of music that you create, that is already going to a higher level than most people. I would die on that hill. And the reason also that I'm saying this is I think that there are a lot of people out there who can be encouraged to do good things in life, to be useful to their community. But this idea that people have that once all our problems are solved, everybody gets to be an artist and yada, 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 I think that is the mentality that we're also seeing a negative result of in terms of not having any kind of gatekeeping at all for except politics. There is political gatekeeping, but except for that, otherwise, if we're talking about the kind of culture that's encouraged, like there was that show Wow Wow Wubsy, where there was a song saying like, you are good just the way you are, you're a star. I think it's much better what the Japanese are doing, where they have examples of characters that go through a certain amount of strife, like, I don't know, Luffy from One Piece, for instance. And these are characters that grow because of the various challenges that are presented to them, instead of this, I think, in my opinion, absolutely idiotic thing where you are, you're already great and special and you're wonderful. Yas, Queen, slay. It's all the same kind of encouragement that I think makes people weak, because there's no pressure that they're fighting against. And Angel, I would love to get your thoughts on that. But Josh, I would love for you to express yourself. I feel like we're all like in the hippie circle over here with a fireplace and drums, but express yourself on that as well.
I'll just say quickly that I think that is kind of conflating two things. There's a conflation happening in the people who do these things. These people that want to constantly affirm themselves and one another, or want constant affirmation.
You mean women?
It's not. Well, I know many dudes who are like this.
I know.
That's true. A lot of yeah.
It's that's a hunger for something, right? And it's not the same as the thing that it's being presented as, right? What they want is for someone to tell them you're okay, right? You're not, like, it's okay that you're confused. It's okay that you're scared. It's okay that you feel inadequate or insecure. Those are normal things. And so it's an overcompensation for that sort of stuff in my mind. But the other thing about, conflict is that we crave it no matter what. We want it. So, nobody wants to watch a movie of 5 people having dinner at a table and having normal conversation. How was your day? Everything's great. And there's no argument. Everybody's nice. Everything's fine, right? That's a boring movie. What they want is conflict, right? Everything is about conflict. Storytelling is all about conflict. You need tension, right? Even music is tension. Like literally, you have to stretch metal across a piece of wood and crank it tight and get it to a certain level of tension so that the right note comes out. Right? That's just the fundamental nature of things. And I think we have an innate sort of desire for that stuff. But if we don't sublimate that desire, if we don't put that desire into productive avenues, it will come out in unproductive avenues. So those same kinds of people that you're talking about, the Yas Queen people and, the constant affirmation people, it doesn't surprise me that the most vicious people that I encounter, the people who come at you so viciously and want to be as venomous as they possibly can, have that same sort of attitude. A lot of them, where they're that way one day or in one instance, and then they flip that switch on and all that venom comes out the other. It's not a surprise to me that that's happening in the same person, because things are just being sent down the wrong tubes. So
within their group, I'd say that there is this, you could say, Mary Sue character that's drawn up in Tumblr. Nothing's wrong with them. If you are a particular minority, there's not going to be any problems with you. You're going to be great. And it's only the white people that are going to have the problems. While at the same time, the people who are, the Nazis and the bigots, they are the declared enemy here. And they are definitely the people who provide the tension that you were talking about in this particular sphere.
The heels, Lev.
The heels, exactly, like in wrestling. But there's not that much attention paid to what internal things could be done within whatever community you're in to actually lift you up, because the pressure is not being applied on you other than just being this kind of like casual internet activist, ratting on people, doing those kind of things. But Josh, I'm curious, when it comes to this kind of culture that we're talking about here, you don't think that the NBs, whatever you want to call them, that these are people who can be, I'm going to use the word salvaged again for lack of a better term, but what do you expect is going to happen here with the majority of the people who are caught up in this us versus them mentality, especially more on the internet left? And if there is no salvaging, what do you think is going to happen next? But maybe there is some salvaging. If you were in charge, what would you do? How would you salvage the situation? That would be the last question.
Oh my God. Well, now we're getting into like political solutions, because that's like, if I was in charge, what I would do is mass deport like 30 million people and
Base red pill.
and close the borders. You know, like people seriously, and close the borders and go back to pre-1965 numbers of how many people would come into the country.
Wow.
You know, something like that. That's what I would do. Look, the world, it's the world is going to have a.
Much.
Wait, what?
Huh?
That wouldn't fix much.
No, I
it
mean,
would fix.
like if it was possible to preserve the border and to preserve the nation and to preserve the meaning of what the country was founded on, then yeah, I mean, it would help. It would also help the rest of the world. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the United States is, it's basically non-existent anymore. It's part of the globalist community. I mean, there really is no more national identity. We're letting in millions of people into the country a year. We're not kicking them out. And there is no there's no more social cohesion. There's nothing that binds us together or anything like that. I mean, the stuff we were talking about before was not really, it was more philosophical and you know, religious stuff than you know, political. So we're doing like a hard turn right now into something else. The thing with secularism and what you guys were talking about before, it's like, it sounds nice, and I agree, a lot of that sounds nice. It's just I don't know what we replaced what we had before with. I don't know if it
well, we have a oppressive social religion. That's probably what replaced it, if anything.
No, I know, but what I'm talking about is humans have an inherent need, whether we like it or not, to believe in a higher power. So the higher power right now might be the government to some people, might be Dr. Fauci to other people. It's like a bunch of different kinds of people. It's like a bunch of different kinds of people, and it's also like what you were saying with the goth thing. It's fashionable, like it's, you know, interchangeable. It's like what we like when we're teens, and then we change it when we're, you know, slightly older, and then we change it again. We keep tinkering, and that's what people are doing with all these things. People have an inherent need to believe in something higher. I don't know what we replaced it with. I don't know if it's better than the religion that people believed in before. I'm not religious, but the older I've gotten, I do revere the you know, I do revere the institutions a little bit more than I did when I was younger. And I mean, obviously, institutions ran by people, it's always going to have corruption. Literally everything has corruption because we're humans. We're not perfect. But the heart of it is that people have a need to believe in something bigger, and they replaced it with absolutely nothing right now. Absolutely nothing. And the fact of the matter is that there are people who are happy and who live fulfilling lives, who are atheists or whatever. But you're talking about a really small group of people, in my opinion. I mean, it's kind of like seeing a healthy vegan. Yeah, there are healthy vegans because they get all these really cool powders and they figured out the combination. But most vegans look like they're about to die, and they're not healthy because they're going against nature. And going against God is going against nature.
That's funny.
I mean, like it is a natural part of human. And I'm not when I say God, I'm not talking about specific religion. Insert specific religion here.
You're talking about something higher than yourself.
Yes, it's something that's innately in all of us. And for some reason, part of modern society right now is to kill nature. We must completely detach ourselves from nature. We must completely detach ourselves from how we have lived for hundreds of thousands of years before religion. And I don't know if what we replaced it with is anything worth salvaging. So I think that the original tenets of liberalism, which really today would be conservatism. I mean, because like go to a liberal 200 years ago, they would be the most they would be far right extremist. They would be Nazi. They would be whatever you want to call them. They would be the most extreme conservative there is today.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree with what with like their view of what liberalism is. The thing is like that John Quincy Adams quote is so perfect because that's literally what happens, and that's why things are cyclical. But the thing is that we're entering a new age right now that I don't know what the outcome of it will be. I don't know what will happen with this new generation of the youth, because they're exposed to things like what Angel and I were talking about before. They're exposed to things that we couldn't even fathom 20 years ago. I mean, like it's such it's a weird experiment that we do not know what the outcome will be. And not only that,
a good example.
Wait, 1 second. Last thing, and then you go.
And then I want to hear from Angel.
Yeah, we don't know what the outcome will be, and things are moving so quickly that like the gaps between generations used to be like 30, 40 years or whatever. Now it's like every 10 years, or maybe even it's getting smaller and smaller, because things are moving so quickly. I don't know, but I hope I kind of answered your, question. I hope.
Even between like late and core millennial is like a world of difference, let alone like millennial. Like me and Lev are like the 30, like I'm 29,
we're right below you guys.
33 and 32. Sorry, Lev. Sorry. You're an age cell. So that the distinction between the jump off of like us and Zoomers, we are the last generation to know what a childhood was like before like total internet simulacra. But let me give you an illustration of what Josh was saying. Now, I like when people post bookshelf. I always try to read the titles. But if I recall, Angel, is that The Second Sex behind you right there? By de Beauvoir?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I knew it a mile away. Okay. So de Beauvoir makes very interesting points. I'm not totally against...
I should note at this point, since you pointed to it, I should note that most of these books are my wife's.
Oh, oh, totally mogged.
So she's the brilliant reader. I'm like hopelessly underread.
Oh no, it's all right.
You read music.
De Beauvoir makes.
I don't even read music.
Okay.
Oh no. That's okay. Yeah. No, it's true. I can't read music.
I'm at like my music reading level is at like C spot run. That's that. So I can do it, but it'll take me all day.
Yeah. Well,
sorry to cut you off.
No, it's all right. So The Second Sex, de Beauvoir talks about a particular form of female embodiment and how patriarchal norms frustrate this sort of picture of the woman itself. So she's making very much an ontological argument, right? So it's funny how nowadays de Beauvoir in academia, especially in women's studies, has been canceled, quote unquote, because her form of female embodiment is, quote unquote, essentialist. So she's talking about a woman's perspective living under, well, I mean, of course, to me, the word patriarchy means something different, but let's just say for argument's sake that patriarchy informs the subjectivity of a woman in a very particular way, right? That's very much repressive. But nowadays, people say that, no, Simone de Beauvoir is repressive because she places a, quote, essentialist view of the woman qua woman, meaning that the particular forms of how a woman experiences herself and how she interacts with the world is dictated by her biological, psychic, even to some extent spiritual, although she was, French atheist, but which is kind of a different form of atheism, by the way. It's not like, the Dawkins Pinker form of atheism, but for argument's sake, she has a very materialist view of the subject. But she's saying that a woman's selfhood is how they interact with the world. But nowadays, in gender studies, that's beyond reproach, because that is like, oh, that's, essentialist. You can't say that a woman's embodiment influences her view of the world, because what about, I don't want to say it, but you all know the implications of that, very the fluidity of gender. So I find it very fascinating because nowadays, what Josh is saying about the anti-nature picture of it, something that was affirming women's liberation now is, quote unquote, oppressing liberation for other groups of identities. And I find it quite fascinating how quickly that discourse has changed, because de Beauvoir used to be all the rage back in the 80s up until the mid 90s in academia. Nowadays, it's like, she's part of the problem, whatever that problem is. We all can guess what group of people we're talking about, but I just find it fascinating as an illustration of how the discourse around nature and human embodiment, how that now becomes oppressive. And it's like, it's very interesting. So I hope I did. Yeah. But.
No, I just want people to see that it's a real background, not a green screen. But if we were to break down also what Josh was talking about, if we were to pick just one thing, because there was a lot of things there, if I were to pick one thing, it would be national identity and the idea that there is nothing that is cohesive to people anymore in the Western world and the United States specifically. Would you be able to steelman that is that something that you see that is going on? Can you make a case for that going on? And then what would be a solution to that? Should there be a solution to that?
I can see the argument for saying that there's a lot less of a sense of, Americanness that is unifying our culture here in the United States. There's not a kind of a nationalistic sense of like, this is our country, this is what we believe in, this is who we are. I can see that. There's certainly some of that, but I don't know how bad that actually is necessarily. I think it depends on what takes its place. So it's kind of like what Josh was saying. But the thing is that we have a tendency to romanticize and idealize the past. We have a tendency to look back fondly and not notice all the flaws. And the thing I was thinking as Josh was talking, especially about, we left religion and, all this sort of thing is I just kept thinking, when you're single and it sucks and you start thinking about your ex-girlfriend and you're like, that was great. I'd be really happy if I could just go right back to that right now. And then, I've been in that situation, right? But then you play it out in your head for a few minutes and you start to remember all the daily bullshit that, and, the reason the relationship ended, whatever it is. And then you go, no, you know what? Fuck that. And I think we need to recognize that that's part of the issue. Now, it doesn't mean being single doesn't suck, right? It still sucks, or it could suck, whatever. It certainly did suck for me, but just because we don't know where we're headed, just because we don't know what might happen, doesn't mean that we're better off staying where we are or going back to something that we left, right? And I think that a lot of the ideas that we've abandoned, maybe we should have abandoned. But the void that they create, again, that's kind of like what I was saying before, is that now we have work to do and we might screw up, but the work needs to get done. And I think that, not necessarily Josh, but a lot of people kind of say this sort of thing of, this is what happens when we give up religion. This is what happens when we give up this and this and this. And they say it in a way of like, everyone should just go back to church and it'll fix this problem. And they're forgetting what their ex-girlfriend was like on a day-to-day basis, the reason we broke up in the first place. So that's what I think there.
Or even you could say that, assuming nothing of that sort happened, and I'm sure it did, but if I were to, again, steelman it, I would say that things were great with the church. All the people kind of fell in line to whatever traditional roles they were meant to be. And, everything was, everybody was vibing like that. They're arranged marriage. You don't have to worry about, right. This silly thing of Alexander Bard, who was on here. I would love to get you guys together. He made a point about that too, how traditionally there wasn't this romance within marriage. It was seen as this contract.
Arranged marriage is based, lad.
For the sake of continuing. For the sake of
the incel and the femcel
continuing
problem,
but see, that's an interesting example right there.
You want state-mediated GFs? That's going to be terrible.
Where on one hand,
right,
but that's the interesting thing, right? On one hand, where you have this idea of something very oppressive, where Romeo and Juliet can't decide to be with each other. It's going to be up to the Capulets and the Montagues to decide who gets paired up with who. But on the other hand, you also have this idea of it's going to create this stability. So I think the ultimate question, where we're kind of inching our way towards here, is we don't have a crystal ball. I wish we did. We could probably go into the desert and meditate and then come back prophet, and then we'll be able to solve things, but people hardly have time to meditate as it is. But when it comes to what we are able to do, going back to what I originally said, how can we know as best as we can whether certain policies that are enacted right now are going to result in this horror beyond all imagination, or if it's going to be something that is worked out? How can we decide whether something that we have in society is acceptable enough to let society work through it, as opposed to saying, wait a minute, this is something that we can say beyond a shadow of a doubt, as close as possible. This is something that's extremely dangerous, so much so that we have to act right now, and we have to act as hard as possible. We have to act in such a way that's going to make people blush in order to rid ourselves of something that we have decided is bad. And I understand, like, you don't have a crystal ball either, so the question is, what is the first process of going about this? Because that, I think, is something that could bring different sides together, whether you're liberal or conservative or whatever, into actually figuring this whole thing out.
Well, in my opinion, the only options we have are to look back at what we've done and assess it as objectively as we can, and try not to repeat ourselves in terms of the mistakes we made. Keep what works, get rid of what didn't work, try your best to evolve. And the other thing is collaborate. Understand that different people have different perspectives, and there's actually value into having conflicting perspectives engaging with one another, because you're not going to catch everything. You're not going to anticipate everything. But if you put your heads together with other people who come from different perspectives, they have different ideas, different fundamental principles, or they're calibrated differently than yours, they might catch things that you wouldn't. And the way that works is liberalism. The way that works is being open to that sort of free inquiry and free discussion and free debate. Even though you're going to disagree, that's fine. Disagreement is fine, but having that tension is necessary. So, I mean, we're tying it all together now, but all that tension is necessary. And that collaboration is necessary. Everything that we've accomplished as a species has been the result of successful communication and cooperation with one another, right? There's no such thing as a solo album, right? Prince can play 20 instruments, but he can't play them all at the same time, right? And he can put out an album where he wrote everything and played everything and recorded everything. But when you open up the liner notes, you still see a bunch of other people there listed. Other people had to do things for that thing to be in your hands so that you can enjoy it, right? There's no such thing
click tracks now
as a solo album.
But at the same time,
so you need a PR guy, you need a producer, you need a mixer, you need an engineer.
True. But you can have a choice. But you can have a choice of 10 PR fellas. You could have a choice of different. Sure. I mean, look at Prince working with the Revolution.
A large joke right there.
You had Prince with the Revolution.
Being in prison and having a shitty Korg with a little microphone.
Right.
Well, I mean, Prince was with who else other than the Revolution? I just don't remember their names, but you get the idea. There was who was
he had some fascinating studio musicians. He had some of the best in the world. Yeah.
He also brought up Carmen Electra and Sheila E. with the drums. You remember Sheila E? She was in the Magic Johnson, the Magic Hour. Oh man, I completely forgot about that show. But she's nice. Anyway,
but the final piece there is we need to recognize that we are all involved in this common project. So that's the reason we should be collaborating and communicating, is because all of us have this fundamental incentive towards progress and flourishing, right? Like all of us together need to flourish together. We're all on the same boat. There's no such thing as kicking people off the boat. There's no getting rid of people, right? Unless you're just going to become a mass murdering lunatic. You can't get rid of everybody. You have to learn how to work with people. And everyone has that same fundamental goal of, I just want my life to be as good as possible. I want to do better. I want to provide for my family, right? I break it down. Everyone wants safety, security, satisfaction, and success. All of our desires, all of our ideas boil down to those things, and we have them in common. We need to recognize that. And if we recognize that, that will open us up to working with one another.
Even the Antifa people, they also have the same qualities?
They do.
No, the Antifa people like raping little boys. That's what
whoa. We're on YouTube here. We're on YouTube here.
No, I meant like grapes making wine.
Yes,
with them.
No. Yes. No,
well,
but
you don't believe that we need a billion more Americans like Matty Iglesias.
I don't know. Look, it's pretty idealistic. I used to think that way, like the whole thing Angel was saying, that sounds very nice, the collaboration and all that, which is true. I agree. I agree with that. Why isn't it happening? Why isn't it happening now? It used to happen. The country used to flourish. It was flourishing a long time, not in recent history, but I'm not even talking about like in the Trump era. I'm talking about like like the 80s seemed nice to people, but that's because, again, they romanticize the past. But let's go back even further. Like, let's go back before World War II or something. I mean, even how we pulled together for World War II to, rally everyone, rally the troops, everyone was in the same boat. You have no semblance of that. You almost had that after 9/11. There was like a little bit of that up in the air. You kind of felt it, but then it kind of died quickly because it was fake. And we don't have that anymore. And it's for the mean reason I mentioned before of having to deport people. There is no social cohesion. The school system is literally designed to teach kids to hate the country. They're tearing down statues of people, and we're ignoring our history. What heroes do kids have anymore? We don't look up to anyone. We look up to like stupid people, David Dobrik or whatever. We look up to stupid people on YouTube,
Twitch streamers.
Yeah, exactly.
I disagree with a lot of that.
It's okay. That's why.
Well, that's why we're here. That's why Break the Rules brings people together who disagree with each other.
No, totally.
Yeah, like I hope you don't hate me.
No, not at all.
but yeah, I mean, I think that that there really is no sense of social cohesion anymore. Look, I live in Costa Rica. This is a surprisingly nationalistic country, very nationalistic, even though the people that live in Panama look exactly like they do. They're from the same region. Their ancestors are probably very similar in DNA and all of that. But it's a very nationalistic country. They even have their own national slogan. Everyone says it to each other. It's like mahalo or whatever in Hawaii. They say pura vida here, and they love the country. We don't have that anymore in the United States. I don't think we will get it anymore, especially because of the advancements in technology that kind of completely tear us out of our element. I mean, they do. I'm going all over the place, but it's because I stay quiet for a long time. I mean, it's interesting that the tech sector, the tech world is so interesting because they're all solving problems to things that aren't real problems. Like Postmates is a really good example, or all the dating apps ever are a good example. And that's kind of the thing. It's like once you create this nation of consumers that are completely detached from one another and completely fragmented. I mean, it's for the taking. I mean, when people talk about globalists and globalism and all of that, I mean, it's real. That's a real problem. They want the world to be completely devoid of identity, of tradition, of anything. They want a homogenous world, which it works on a micro level, like a homogenous Japan. It's interesting. They have basically zero immigration, and their traditions they're changing a little bit, but it's like manageable. Like you can notice the slight changes, but there's still national pride in literally everything they do. I mean, like the garbage man there wants to be the best garbage man to ever exist in the world of garbage men. It's not like that anymore. And yes, people do want the same things. People do want security and all that. But right now it's like a gold rush of free shit from the government. And I mean, which is not, it's nothing new, but it's getting so unmanageable and so crazy. We're $30 trillion in debt. So it's like a bunch of people who are rushing to come here because they know that they won't be kicked out. They're trying to get all this free stuff. They don't know what the country was founded on. They don't care who the founding fathers were or anything like that. And I think that's important. I think it's kind of like religion, like in the sense that we need it's not like to romanticize the past, but we need to look to the past to create to preserve like a very stable present and future. Like we don't really pass down anything anymore to our kids, which is it's a real problem. I think like there's nothing that really is even binding families together. You know what I mean? I don't know. I did go all over the place.
I could give you a counter example to what you're saying, Josh. For example, in Long Island, let's say, and I'm not saying Long Island is the Garden of Eden or anything, but you have people who are working class, Italians, Irish, Jewish people as well. You have different kinds of people who even though they came from different parts of Europe, what they were able to achieve in the United States when they were discriminated against when they first came here, they were able to achieve a certain level of pride and the ability to show everybody, like, hey, we came here, we did these these amazing things, we are Americans, we love America, we love our country. My approach is, let us have people in the United States who are like that, who are able to show the people that they're integrating into that, regardless of the color of their skin or where they came from, that they are going to live up to exactly the same expectation as the people there have for their children, both intellectually and morally. As far as the standard, regardless of who you are, what color your skin is going to be the same. And that way, I think that's going to eliminate discrimination. That's going to, as much as possible, that's going to eliminate racism. Because what we're talking about here is, well, to an extent. The point is that...
Look, I fully agree with you. That's what the country used to do. That's what it... I mean, look, the people you're describing came here and they were treated so horribly, and yet they overcame it. Like, the people nowadays are treated kind of bad sometimes, and it's like we have to burn down every city when something happens. Like, it's really funny, like, the reaction to things. You know, people were treated.
But again, that's a religious sentiment when they're burning down the cities. That's a religious. Sentiment.
For sure. That's the new religion. But so I agree with you. We used to do that. And we don't do that anymore. Think about it like this, okay? I hate college. I never went. I think it's stupid, whatever. But in its origins, like, it was a place where only really, really impressive people, or you were rich and life's not fair, whatever. Life's not fair. You know, everything's corrupt. But the purpose of it was very few people really got to go. And it's like, you have to be really impressive. Especially if you're an outsider, you have to be really smart, really driven, really impressive, that they're begging you to come. The floodgates have been opened, and now college is kind of just where people go after, and it's flooded with, like, the least impressive people, and it's oversaturated, and the smart people are kind of like, hey, keep it down, we're trying to learn, and no one wants to learn, and it's really to party and all that. That's what the United States has become. So I agree with you. There needs to be a massive vetting process. You can't just have it open.
I do want to say another recent group, which is the Nigerians. So I can't say for that
Nigerians are hard workers.
Yeah,
they're really, and by the way, they're, like, so stoked to be in the United States. They'll like. So what I'm talking about is not race. Like, I'm not saying, hey, we need to kick out all the black people, or we need to kick out all the Mexicans. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But we need to have
someone's going to pull that audio clip right there.
They're gonna be like, that's what I'm saying.
So important, though.
That's what I'm saying.
We're underestimating the importance of it.
I mean, well, unfortunately, a lot of people do get to that point when they feel like there's no outlet, and when they feel like there's no way to even have the conversations about the culture, to have conversations about what it is that holds us together and how we can improve.
Well, even education, I think Josh made a great point. There was this great video. And you actually interviewed him recently when he was part of MD, Sam Hyde, college C words. I'm not going to say it for YouTube.
Thank you, Gio.
But it was sort of like a satirical look at, like, lamenting of the state, of, like, what it means to grow up in America or North America in general, and to have this sort of like not just depressive, but also, like, apathetic and almost, like, nonsensical sort of education system that you have to invest so much time and money in your life into. Meanwhile, it's like the psyop that boomers gave us that you have to go to. And I wasted enough time in university to get not one, but 2 master's degrees.
No, you had good professors.
No, but, like, the point being is that to tell people that you have to do this, even though the system is fundamentally flawed, and the only way you can attain not just an employment, but also social clout, and even the ability to say that you're somebody by saying, I went to university. Why did you go to university? That's sort of like the psyop that was given to us by previous generations, who thought when back in the day, that was their key to success, because it was it made sense back in the 70s and 80s, but nowadays not so much.
But
Sorry, cut you back,
there was a comment that I want to address to Angel.
okay.
So Nico had a comment in the chat. Gio, please explain to Lev that the multiculturalism, and again, I wouldn't say it's multiculturalism. I'd say it's elevating other. No. It's elevating. Let's say you could have certain things within cultures, like different celebrations that people do, different festivals from different countries. That's fine. But still, I would say it's not multiculturalism. It's still ingratiating into a particular culture that may change from time to time in certain areas, but would still maintain the core. So Nico says, please explain to Lev that multiculturalism he likes was only possible because of American nationalism. So the question to Angel is, if we're talking about even the word nationalism is, nationalism, like people are scared of that word today for the violent connotations that were in the past. The question here is the things that Josh was talking about regarding people, getting to that, and I was talking about too, getting to that certain level where we could all agree on, like, we don't care where you're from or what color you are, but as long as you are with us in terms of all these things that were mentioned, then we're good to go, and we're going to be, we're both going to be great Americans. So what do you see as being problems with that? And would it also be problems with nationalism or the idea of nationalism, or where could a lot of these things, in your opinion, go wrong that maybe Josh and Gio were not looking into?
I think that the problem is the same, and it's happening in different forms across a lot of the things that you all were just talking about, like school, for example, college. I definitely, I agree that college is a racket very often. And I do think that, people come out the other end no smarter or better off intellectually, or even in terms of opportunity than they were when they went in, except they have a ton more debt. So there are plenty of problems there. But it's kind of a thing that people do where there's a pursuit, and then there comes a means to get to that pursuit, or there's a means to that end, right? There's an end, and then there's a means to the end, and then eventually the means become the end. So we just treat the means as if they were the end, and we forget what the end was, the original end was. And we do this with school, we do this with grades, right? Like, you want the A because it means that you have understood the material to this superior level. But then eventually you just want the A. And eventually you'll just do whatever you need to do to get the A, whether you understand the material or not, right? So there's this kind of, I guess it's like a reverse concept creep or something. I don't know if there's a name for it, but the same thing happens with things like nationalism. The same things happen with the country itself. So, I mean, I have very particular views about the country and America, and what America is and what it means. And, I'll just say, I mean, the most patriotic people I know are immigrants. And the people who are most in tune with the founding principles of this country are immigrants. And I know many of them. They're the ones who are the closest to those ideas and hold those ideas the most dearly, and work to preserve them and work to embody them. And I think it's because it's new. I think it's because they came from somewhere where those ideas were not granted, where those ideas were not, automatic. And there are people who were born and raised here who don't have that same sense of, value for those values, right? I think America is mainly an idea. Yeah, it's a place, it's a patch of land, it's a collection of, it's a collection of territories, right, bound by certain laws and blah, blah, blah. But I think America, more than that, is an idea. It is those founding principles. That is the real genesis of America. The minute that those principles were put forth and codified, something beautiful was created. And I believe that someone can be an American without actually technically being an American. I think there could be somebody in Costa Rica right now who holds these values, who holds these ideas, right? And they are an American as far as I'm concerned. Whether they ever set foot on American soil, they are American. And there are plenty of people who live here, who were born here, and who will have never left and will never leave. who are not American in that way. So, this is conceptual territory again, right? So of course I understand all the technical legal stuff, but I'm speaking about that thing that I think Josh is lamenting having lost. Right?
Well, there's
And
another thing. Sure.
Well, I just think that part of the problem is losing sight of that thing. But I just think things shift, and I think it's very easy to get the impression that things are worse than they are, depending on what kind of stream of information you consume. Like I feel like I'm getting a completely different news feed than Josh, because my perception of what's going on is so different, right? And that's also happening. So there's that.
Well, the bigger question, I think, and this goes for pretty much, I think, all Americans, including a lot of the Americans that live, like, I don't know, in the Appalachian regions, a lot of the poor Americans there that are not getting by that well, that have to go and shop at Walmart, and, kind of like the traditional image that people on the West or East Coast would have of, like the poor white Americans. I would put them into this category as well, with the question of, when we have a society, let's say like Francis Bacon's The New Atlantis. I don't know if you're familiar with that book of his.
Mm-mm.
So The New Atlantis, it was a book by Francis Bacon, who was allegedly William Shakespeare. That's a theory that was floating around, who also may have written the King James Bible. That's another theory that's floating around. It's very interesting. Look into it. But his New Atlantis book was about how there is this island that was founded by scientists who had all these androids, like androids, writing about androids in the Elizabethan times. Can you imagine that? So he had all this various insight. Who knows how he got it as far as how people lived. And I would assume that if you want to be a citizen of Atlantis, a New Atlantis, not only do you have to, let's say, want to be a citizen, like I will be the best Neo-Atlantean of all time, but there has to be a certain standard as far as the way that I raise my kids, the way that I have a philosophy about life, the way my competency is when it comes to, let's say for New Atlantis, it would be engineering, it would be various other sciences. The way my competency level for certain things has to be a particular amount for me to be let in. My question is, when it comes to any country that's a first world developed country like the United States, how much do you think those things need to be kept account of? And again, regardless of where the person is from, how much do you think those things need to be kept account of as far as the people that would be brought into the United States, regardless of how much they want to be a part of the United States?
Oh, you mean like, so there's like a
and I don't know the metrics to prove it.
Entrance exam for
I don't know what
becoming
and I don't know what the exams would be. I know countries like Australia have certain criteria, like a certain point system based on the career that you had before coming in here. And I would say career, not job. Like there are certain things that, like Japan as well. You have to have a certain level of proficiency in particular fields in order to be able to even have a chance of becoming a citizen there. So the reason why I'm saying this is I think something like that does an amazing job, in my mind, of solving a lot of racial problems, because you're talking about people who are bigoted against those that they don't know, they don't understand. All of a sudden, like in New York City, there are people from all around the world that I have met who are incredibly smart and competent and talented, way more than many Americans. But they bring something to the table. They have something to offer, and any racist in the South that would be exposed to them
this is a very utilitarian view of what it means to be an American. I mean, I come from the first post-national country up to the north of America, but still, I think that, I don't know, it's sort of, you're instrumentalizing it. Like, there's a great comment by Roberto, there's an idea of America, some kind of abstraction, but there's no real America, only an entity. Something.
No, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it's a perfect idea by any means. The only reason why I'm saying this is I'm trying to think, what are the alternatives here? Because there's many people around the world. Most people want to be Americans. So the question is, like, how do you, what are the criteria?
Do they still want to be Americans?
I think so.
I think so, yeah. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that, besides the obvious problems that any kind of criteria like that will be weaponized, suddenly you'll start getting only specific kinds of people because whoever gets to be in charge and make these decisions just so happens to be, keeping certain people out and other people not. And I also think that if this criteria had been applied 100 years ago, 200 years ago, we wouldn't have the country we have. We would have a totally different one, because all the immigrants that came and turned out to prosper and become, integral components to our society and contributed so much wouldn't be here in the first place. But I also think that it just kind of goes against the American principles, because America is all about potential. That's the whole point, right? And it's not, oh, we'll only assess those we feel have enough potential. It's, you all have potential. Everyone has potential. Come and get it. You know what I mean? That's kind of the attitude is, it's yeah, come show me what you got.
But then it's
Let's
kind of
do
a,
this.
but then it's
That's
kind of
one view of
a casino in a way, because yes, there is a potential. Let's say we have 1 million people, and among those 1 million people, we could say a certain percentage of those 1 million people have the potential. Now, maybe we can argue whether it's 10%, whether it's 50%. I believe in the 80-20 rule in general. I think it's a good kind of Occam's razor way of going about it. You can
80-20
disagree.
rule.
No. If you're in any field, you're going to have a certain amount of people that make it to the top and others that don't. You could say it's in various economical factors, whatever. But if we're talking about a country that, number one, has, and I'm not saying that it has an extremely limited supply of whatever, but still, it is a country that you can't ad infinitum have everybody in the world go to America. Whoever says, well, I want to be an American and go there, obviously the whole thing it wouldn't work. There has to be a process. But even if a process was slowed down to, I don't know, like, maybe what we have right now, the question still remains. The potential, I agree with you. If there was just if a random amount of people were dropped in somewhere, you could say, well, these people, they have the potential to be great. I don't know that they have the potential to be great, but they have the potential. Potential means that there's something that would happen and we don't know what that is yet. So it goes back to the question of what are imperfect ways of dealing with something that may and maybe not, but may be a problematic situation in the future, where for all the people who have the potential, yes. Josh, go for it.
Do we live in a global strip mall, Josh?
Yeah, no, I don't think I don't think we do. I don't know why it's bad to have strict borders. I'm not saying don't let anyone in, but we should, heavily vet the people coming in, and we should only want the best of the best. And I don't think everyone has potential. I think that's just not how things are. I don't know why we owe it to the whole world to allow them to come here. That's another thing. I mean, even if you go back 100 years or even more, like 200 years, the amount of people coming here, and to compare that time to this time, it's a small fraction of people that were coming here. I mean, it was like 20,000 people. It was nothing. Yeah, I'm saying
Well,
Sure.
I could give you a quick example. Sorry to interrupt. I could give you a quick example with my family. As far as I remember, what ended up happening is it was very strict for us from the USSR, well, post-USSR, coming to the United States. So people were asking all kinds of questions about whether we had any communist connections and whether, I think there were definitely questions having to do with jobs as well. What are our skills? What could we do? What could we offer? What schools did we go to? All that was taken into account. So, Angel, just from my own perspective, I think that was fair. And my parents
I'll clarify. I'm not like throw open the gates, fuck it kind of person. That's not, I think there should be, and then there are practical limitations, right? Like we can't just let 1 billion people in a week, right? Like that doesn't work. Everything will crumble. We can't do that.
Yeah, but letting 1 billion people in 20 years, I don't think that works either. Like that's the real difficulty here. Like how do we?
So there are practical limitations, right? Like you can only blow up the balloon so much, right? So there are natural limitations there in terms of
but with also people on the streets right now, the other big question is, has the balloon already been blown to full capacity? That's the other big question.
I don't know, but and I'm fine with having standards, right? But we should just be careful what those standards are, because it's very easy for me to hear people talk about this sort of thing, and I can just kind of apply it and go, well, I wouldn't be here then.
Well,
And
how I could say,
when we think about desserts, right? We think about who deserves to be here. Not everyone deserves to be here. Well, who gets to decide who deserves to be here? Do I deserve to be here because I was born here? Does that person deserve to be here because they really, really want to? Where do we draw the line, and who gets
Well,
to
there
draw
is a
it? That's part
precedent.
of the issue.
There is a founding stock of America that does have a coherent, or at least did have a sort of coherent identity and sort of ethnic base. I mean, there is a precedent to America.
Even if that's the case, that's also pure luck. Those people just happen to be born on this patch of land. It just so happened that, like I didn't do anything.
That's an abstraction.
But also,
No,
life's not
really.
fair.
It's a literal, it's a literal reality. Like I just happened to be born here. I just got lucky, right? My parents did all the work, and I just showed up here, right? I was born on the finish line, right?
yeah.
How could you not believe in God after that? I'm kidding.
Well,
I mean, that is an
it's just
interesting
pure-
question about a
it's just pure
reincarnation.
luck. But if you think about this, like, do I deserve to be here? Right? What does that mean? What does it mean to deserve to be here? And what does it mean for me now, having just been lucky to be born in this position, to turn around and shut the door in somebody else's face?
I think
Right?
we're
Now-
over intellectualizing
Well-
it.
And there's
Honestly.
Well, no,
limit
but
to
that is
though.
the reality of people's experience that we're talking about, right? We're talking
But-
about setting up policies that will create this reality for certain people and giving us the luxury of doing that simply because we were lucky enough to be here, but before someone before us could have done it to us.
How much
right?
do you think it is luck versus how much do you think it is thinking about these things in a way, an homage that you are paying to the people before you that set up things in a certain way, where if I plant a seed, if I'm like, I don't know, Abraham, let's say, and God, Yahweh, tells me, your seeds are going to be numerous like the stars in the sky or whatever. That is something that I am deciding to do to go ahead on this project of progeniting my progeny. That is something that I'm going to make sure, like, I'm going to have a system that's going to be beneficial, work for them, that they'll work hard and they'll pass on good values to other people. I think what America is ultimately is the passing on of values, passing on the torch from one generation to another, including the people who come in here and partake of that same torch, partake of that same fire. But there has to be a passing. There has to be a branching out of those same principles. If there's no branching out, if people are just ghettoized like a lot of groups were in the beginning, and that create a lot of tension, you create a fifth column. And I think that's a lot of the tensions we're seeing today. If the torch is passed, it has to be passed to people that are actually able to hold the fire within. And I think that when it comes to the bigger question here that you were asking about regarding how can we make sure that these systems wouldn't get abused, I think we can look at various systems of transparency today. Number one, America is a nation of lawyers. Like it or not, and I like it. I like the fact that we still have a judicial system that, despite its flaws, is able to, as we've seen, certain instances work. And because we're a nation of lawyers, I think there definitely should be transparent systems where if somebody is denied and they know themselves that based on the work that they did, based on their, various achievements, the various, testing, I don't even know how you would test, but assume that there is some kind of testing. I'm not going to say what right now, but assume there is something. Then that is something that people can bring out, show to some appeals court, publicly declare and say, like, look, guys, look how good I am. I'm being discriminated against because XYZ, and then something could be done from there. Now, obviously, there could be potential problems there too, but at least we're working it out. At least there's something that we can grab onto, and there's nothing that we could grab onto right now.
Standards are fine. Structures are fine. Rules are fine. We need them. I'm just pointing to some inherent tensions between conflicting kind of ideals here, right? And conflicting realities, right? Because this whole thing of, life isn't fair. Yeah, sure. But it's also, and yes, that's true. And, it just is what it is. But that's an easy thing to say when you're on the better side of life isn't fair, right? And then when you're on the other side of life isn't fair, suddenly life isn't fair isn't just something you can just say, right? So that's just, both of those things are true. Both those realities exist and they're in tension. And we need to try to find ways to balance that if we can. So I'm not saying throw open the gates, but I'm also not saying, only the people born inside the house party get to have the house party, and everybody outside knocking on the door, fuck them, right? We can't do that either. And I'm not saying anyone here is saying that, but those are kind of competing ideas, and they both have inherent problems, right? We can't just let everybody in because they feel like it, but we also have to remember, like, the only reason we're here is because somebody got in. So that's part of the problem here, right? So there's a similar kind of thing, if I can elaborate.
Sure.
There's a similar kind of thing to like the idea of gentrification, or the idea of, the neighborhood is just, there goes the neighborhood, right? Like I'm losing the place that I grew up in, right? Like, oh man, that corner store is gone. Oh, that mom and pop shop. Like I used to go there all the time and now it's gone, right? These people are moving in and taking over and changing it. That's true. Yes. But it's also true that the place that was normal to you, the coffee shop that you used to go to that was on the corner, replaced a different shop that someone else used to go to before you, right? And before that, someone else used to go somewhere else that used to be that business. And that's just the way things work, right? The neighborhood changes. That's part of what a neighborhood is. You don't get to keep your neighborhood just because it was yours, right? You don't have a special claim to it any more than the people before your neighborhood became your neighborhood had a claim to theirs. They had to give it up too in order for you to have yours. So it's kind of a similar thing. Like there's this kind of, we forget that we had to be allowed in before we could sit here and decide whether we get to allow someone else in,
Well, Josh, what do you think?
I mean, I think the same that I thought before, that I'm never against, I'm not against letting people in, but we've let in way too many people in way too fast. I mean, there's a reason why our school system is literally designed to hate the country. It didn't used to be like that. It didn't used to be like that. I mean, it's changed, and it happened so quickly. It didn't happen by accident. It happened. I mean, it's unmanageable how many people we've let in so quickly. So I'm not against not letting people in, but the numbers are astronomical. It's not sustainable. The amount of collateral damage we're having with this experiment is going to be astonishing. I mean, the amount of collateral damage happening on all fronts is astonishing. Like the experiment we're doing with tech and how it's pretty much engulfed our lives, and that's an experiment we're doing on the youth. That's a disaster. Where literally every experiment going on right now is a disaster.
Well, I think that did Josh finish?
Yes.
I'm muted. Yeah, I'm every time I stop talking, I mute it because Lev told me I have to because my system is stupid. So I mute.
Oh shit. Okay.
These things happen.
Well, it's funny because like I was going through before the show, and Josh, you've interviewed some very interesting people. Like one of them, which very rarely I would love to get him on the show, but he never does interviews, is Mike Ma. And if you read his book, the recent one, Gothic Horror, Harassment Architecture.
Gothic Violence, yeah.
Gothic Violence, yeah. Oh man, just brilliant.
Angel, you should buy that book and put it in the bookshelf so your wife sees it one day.
So my wife can read it. Yeah, exactly.
Oh God, you don't want very female adverse book.
She won't like it. She won't like it.
Oh, but
you don't know that.
She does that too.
Oh, well, there you go.
She hate reads a lot of things.
But Mike Ma, he talks about this to an extent about this sort of global strip mall. I think that the problem is that when people let's say when America was starting to let in immigrants, I know I'm a product of my mother came from both Italy and Brazil. So the thing is, back in the day, you had this cultural understanding of America, and you almost need, I know this is going to sound crazy. Don't cancel me on this. Don't right away. But the problem isn't that there is racism. The thing is racism we need more of, because only through an understanding of, well, I'm joking. Let's call it nationalism, an idea of an ethnicity. because when people have a cultural understanding of themselves and in relation to the world, therefore they can, and ironically enough, be more tolerant of others, because we can experience the other through our own cultural uniqueness and our own place in the world. So when America let in a lot of immigrants especially from Eastern Europe, especially from the Mediterranean, I'm a product of that. They were sort of ghettoized to an extent, but in these cities, they could experience their own cultural understanding in relation to others. But what happened was, when there was the Great Migration from the South of largely African Americans, when there was a conscious effort to put people of a European stock within the suburbs, then you have this great transformation of American society. And not always for the better. You start to have this notion of America is no longer the product of the WASP Mayflower people that let in these European immigrants because they needed us for whatever reason. Now you have this picture of a sort of fundamental mixing and sort of derootedness of these largely ethnic people from Eastern Europe, from the Mediterranean and so forth, and from Ireland and China and so forth. So what we have is this idea of American suburbia becomes the idea of America. Now the whole world has to be suburbia. And so the problem is, no longer do we have a cultural understanding of ourselves in relation to the world. Now we have this like messy soup of people that have this sort of feeling that they belonged to something. But now it's like, to acknowledge the fact that these differences among people are real is like this unpardonable sin in, most quote unquote polite society. But the problem is, we can't experience an understanding of other people unless we have an understanding of ourselves. And I think that's the problem with contemporary liberal discourse around things like race and identity and ethnicity. Is that, we can't judge solely from this North American experiment that, in my opinion, has largely failed. And, when he comes, and this ties into education, everything else. So that's just my
although before
racism, if you
no,
will.
before Angel's
But,
before Angel's response to that, I want to add a counter, which would be, for example, I like to bring up Alexander Pushkin, who was, I don't know if it's like a quarter black, but his great-grandfather, Hannibal, was brought over from Africa. I don't know if it's Ethiopia, but from somewhere in Africa. He was brought to Peter the Great, and I don't know if you're familiar with the story, Angel, but Hannibal ended up becoming almost, you could say, like pretty much like a son to Peter the Great, who ended up raising him, who ended up teaching him, various languages and various other things, and he ended up rising up through the ranks of the Russian military order there, and he ended up becoming like a big general and very influential person. And I don't think that Hannibal cared at all about the culture where he came from, because he was so ingratiated into the Russian culture at the time. And I think there are going to be people like that who I talked about before, like whether they're in the arts, whether they're in any kind of industry, they end up becoming almost intertwined with that industry. And I'm not saying industry is some kind of oppressive thing, more like arts, crafts, whatever things that make a person see something beyond their own life. I would say that that is something that people have been able to grab onto. While at the same time, I do think that people are struggling to, who don't find that art. There is still the question of, who am I? What do I belong to? What is my group here? And that is a very big deal. And I think that's another thing that Gio was kind of poking at here. But enough for me. Angel, I'm curious, any thoughts you might have?
I kind of like messy soup. I feel like that's... I think that generally speaking, people either don't zoom out far enough or zoom in close enough. They're kind of in this weird middle area where things become too murky and difficult, right? So the way that I conceptualize this stuff is, zoom out all the way and you have common humanity. You have a sense that everyone you meet is your brother or your sister or whatever, right? That's the zoomed out perspective. And that's extremely helpful, and that is very unifying for me. But then you also zoom all the way back in and you realize, okay, every single person is an individual, right? And really without an exact copy, right? Like there's no exact copy of anybody, right? But then you have all these kind of this like Venn diagram of yourself where, you know, I'm in New York City. I can relate to New Yorkers in a way that I can't relate to someone who is born and raised in Oklahoma, right? Or like Omaha, Nebraska, right? Like there's some disconnect there because we don't have a lot of shared experience. That's in the zoomed in way, but the zoomed out way, I can totally connect with somebody in Omaha because there are definitely human experiences that we've shared. So it's about calibration in my mind. And I think that ethnicity and race for sure, because race is just total dog shit. But ethnicity and you know, I just think, yeah, I'm total anti-race. Like the whole thing is nonsense, but
I agree.
that's a whole other conversation. But ethnicity and those sorts of things can work, but they tend to be too vague. They tend to be kind of imprecise and inaccurate and ineffective at doing the thing you want, unless you actively kind of buy into the stereotypes in order to fit in perfectly so that you are this quintessential version of the thing. And then you find other people who have done the same thing and now you're the same. Right. And a lot of this is my personal experience. I was very bad at performing my ethnicity, right? Or my supposed, these supposed things that I was supposed to like or be like or behave in a certain way or listen to certain music, like certain activities, speak a certain way, consume certain media, all that sort of stuff. I was bad at it, right? Because I was a hodgepodge. So I didn't fit in. And that made me realize this whole thing is kind of ridiculous. I would have to relinquish so much of myself, that actual unique individual human being, in order to effectively be a part of this other category, that it's pointless. I'd be losing way more than I'm gaining.
But if you were to talk to somebody, again, bringing up Japan, if you were to talk to somebody who is from Japan, and I've spoken to many people from there, I noticed that there is a very big change that happens when, let's say, my friend who plays ping pong in New York City, when I noticed he was speaking with other people who are Japanese, it's almost like there was a shape-shifting going on. The way that he conducted himself, like the bowing, there is a certain thing that just turns on, and I think that there may be some kind of a group consciousness that comes from all of these years and generations of being on the same island, that these things are just inherent inside of you. It doesn't mean that you cannot reach out. Obviously, you can and do other things, but there are still
it's not inherent, right? Because if that guy, let's say if that person is Japanese by ethnicity, right, by ethnic background, but he's adopted by two Jewish people and never has any contact with any of that stuff, he's not going to like run into a bunch of Japanese people and suddenly start bowing and speaking Japanese, right? All that stuff has to be.
I mean, there is still a question which I haven't looked at as much, having to do with
like you're saying you're losing something, right? I think that people can be individual to their characteristics, but it's not a question of like the things you're highlighting is sort of like very. I would say the problem is that most ethnic groups in America, the vast majority, they have also been tainted by this sort of mono consumerist culture to the point where they think that this is like the sum total of their ethnicity is this like consumer, like surface level things that you identify with. I think that's the problem, is that people don't have a deeper understanding of who they are or where they come from in general.
Yeah, well, but where they come from and who they are is much more complicated than ethnicity, right? And it's also, but the thing you're talking about, is the thing I was talking about the means becoming the end, right? Where it's like, okay, what's the end? The end is this sense of ethnic kind of unity, right? And the means are, if I buy these things and do these things and hang out in these places, then I will get that thing. And then eventually it just becomes about buying the things and doing the things and being in the places. And it's not about the actual, becoming of the thing later, right? It all becomes superficial and surface level.
I think the problem again is probably, well, America in general, I think even has a deep and rich history, but it's been largely mythologized by various disparate groups of people. That
Yeah, well, that's what people
the
do.
American experiment in general, I think is probably what leads people to a lot of confusion. But Josh, I feel like you haven't talked in a while. So what do you think of the American? I know I'm deeply insulting America right now, but no, you know what I mean.
And right before Josh, there was a quote
American
by our
history.
great patron, Super Iron Bob, who's a $50 patron, patreon.com/break the rules. He says, a culture, we got to get that in there. A culturization is a part of the submission of part of yourself so that you can be part of the community. Refusing to compromise is being a porcupine.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
I mean, there is kind of that need, like if I was adopted by a Japanese family, I would ingratiate myself into the values of the glorious Nippon, And same thing, I think, with America.
Nihonjin,
yeah. I don't think we differ that much when it comes to that kind of expectation, as you said, Angel, yourself. But anyway, Josh, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all true. I just don't think that's happening anymore in the United States. It used to. I don't think it happens anymore. And I think that's kind of where the problem lies. I think that, again, people maybe don't have an inherent, it's not inherent in them that, like, if they're Japanese and then they're raised in the United States to bow, it's not inherent. But what people do have that is inherent is to be a part of something bigger than them. But right now, everything is so completely fragmented that it's impossible for there to even be a thing that is bigger than anything. And I think that's the problem. I think that's where the problem. And again, it's not this whole thing that we're talking about. It's like not sustainable how quickly everything is accelerating towards the bottom. It's just not sustainable. And so that need is inherent. Like, we need to feel like we are a part of something. We are tribal. We used to only know maybe maximum 200 people. And there was a hierarchical system, and there was rules and traditions and all of that. And, maybe looking back, you're like, oh, that was stupid. That was a stupid tradition or rule or whatever. But still, I think that those people were probably more fulfilled maybe than the average person, maybe than the average Zoomer of today. And maybe that's why, there's Nick Fuentes' group. I've interviewed Nick. I know him. I'm cool with him. But maybe that's why there's like the Groyper movement. Like, there's like kids, especially young men, need this sense of camaraderie that just doesn't exist. Especially, it doesn't exist in the real world. So they go online and they try to find these things online, which is like, it basically is the metaverse. Like, they're trying to make the metaverse in Facebook, but it already exists. It's called the internet. And people are trying to get these experiences that they're heavily lacking in real life, and it's because everything is completely fragmented and there's no semblance of community. Whenever people talk about community nowadays, I think they don't even know what that word means anymore. It's just a political talking point at this point. It doesn't really mean anything anymore.
It's definitely a problem. Yeah, those things are definitely happening. I don't know if I agree with you about how much it's happening or how bad it is, but it's certainly an issue. But I also think just that identity crises are normal. This is the way we are. This is the way people are. And this stuff is constantly shifting. And I think America is in a unique position because of its nature, because of the nature of what America is. America is this kind of messy soup by design. That's kind of what it is and what it needs to be in order to be itself. And I'm reminded just of, this, I don't know if this is actually true, but I remember reading something many years ago about, a baby who is hearing multiple languages at home, right? So maybe like the parents speak one language to each other, and then they speak a different language to grandma who lives in the house. And so there's maybe 3 languages that the baby is exposed to at the same time while it's an infant. And there's a point where the parents are starting to get concerned because the baby hasn't spoken yet. And so they take it to the doctor and they say all this stuff. And then it turns out that the baby is actually absorbing all 3 languages and learning all 3 languages. And once it started to speak, it could speak all 3. It just took a little bit longer because it's 3 instead of just the 1. So, you got your first word maybe 6 months later than you normally would, but you're getting your first word in 3 languages. So yeah, I don't know if that story is true. I don't know if that scientifically is correct, but metaphorically, I feel like that's kind of America. America is the baby that is exposed to all these different languages, and it might take longer for that first word. But once that first word comes, it's automatically a different, unique, and beautiful thing, in my opinion.
The only thing I'll add to the only thing I'll add to that is that we used to be that. We used to be beautiful and unique, and I think that we're not that anymore. I mean, I think
we're more unique and beautiful than we were.
I don't know.
I mean, even part of the growing.
I don't know. Things are pretty bad right now.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at how things used to how things used to look. I mean, before even the advent of the car, I think, and this is like again a whole nother topic. I think the car completely destroyed the landscape of the United States and then pretty much the rest of the world. It did. I mean, cities used to be human scaled, and now it's made for the car. You have massive billboards everywhere. You have big box stores, which invites globalism. You have all these things that really take away the semblance of a community.
Yeah. But at the same time, if somebody needs medical...
My mic was muted before. Let me just say that I have my criticisms of Nick Fuentes, and he exactly doesn't like me. But I understand what you're saying, Josh. I think that...
I used him as an example of like the group that follows him. Like, it's young people who want something meaningful, and it's just that there isn't anything. And also, like, it is the metaverse. You go online for that. You're LARPing. And I'm not saying his followers or anything. I'm saying, like, in general, if the only life you have is online, you're LARPing, and I feel bad for you just because you need something real and you just won't get it online. It's like having a girlfriend who lives in a different state. Like, you're pretending you're in a relationship, but you're not in a real one.
I think that people are trying to find meaning online. It takes a very special person with probably some neurodivergence to find meaning on the internet. I mean, my life has certainly been changed by being on the internet, by meeting different people. But I do think that the problem is that even the meme itself, touch grass, has been weaponized by, like, irony people to say, like, you're a loser, bro, touch grass. I think that the problem is that younger people, their only recourse, especially younger men, their only recourse in life is sort of this e-world, this digital simulacra. And I think that's, a shame. But Josh mentioned sorry to cut you off really quickly. I know you have to go, but the car pill, that's amazing, because the more you abstract people's means of subsistence. I live in a country where everything is separated. It's impossible to live in Canada unless you live in Toronto, even then, so without a car. The more you abstract people's sort of even geographic closeness is a huge problem. And the big box store, as we know, has destroyed the mom and pop. So go ahead, Angel. Final word. I know you have to go.
Oh, wait. And before Angel's final word, I just want to say, in praise of cars and all this kind of stuff, we are and in praise of Angel's idea of progress, is that now we have Elon Musk's satellite internet. And guess what? That means that people can actually go back to certain more country, rural communities and still have internet connections and do business that way. So we are figuring ways out of the problems that make society into a hellscape as well. That's my defense right there, Angel. So go for it. Final thoughts.
No, I mean, more and more I am accepting the reality that there are no solutions, only trade-offs, and that never ends, right? And I think, I'm reminded of 2 memes that I know. Well, one of them is, cell phones have ruined people. Nobody communicates anymore, right? That's the statement. And what you see is a photograph of people like 70 years ago or something sitting in a trolley car, and everyone's got their head buried in a newspaper. Right? No cell phone, but nobody's talking anyway. And there's a sense in which we always do this to ourselves.
Yeah. If there's an excuse not to talk.
Yeah, we will always do this to ourselves because it's just in our nature to go, things are different and it's terrible. And there's the Steven Pinker thing. I don't know if he's quoting someone else, but I read it from him where, the best explanation for the good old days is a bad memory. So
That's a terrible.
Oh, and speaking of good memory, one final thing here. Here is the Healthline article. Let's see if I can bring it up here. Here is the Healthline article talking about the seed oils lowering testosterone. So
Hey, it's science. I was right.
there we go.
Well,
So-
Ray Peat was a reputable microbiologist, if I recall. So he was the one that started the
Yes.
anti-seed oil.
But
crusade.
Angel, I want to thank you so much for coming in, and also big thank you to the work that you're doing and the work that FAIR is doing. I think that regardless of any of the blackpilling here in the conversation, the fact that FAIR, unlike all of you internet people who aren't doing shit, is actually going out, speaking to people who are on the fence right now, a lot of people who are living in the cities, a lot of people who have influences from their co-workers to make them think in a certain ideological direction. I am so happy that an organization like FAIR exists where they can actually go out and bring people together to talk about these things, and please keep doing it. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm doing my best.
Excellent. And here you could follow Angel, everybody, at Strange Ed Weird. So strange then
Strangel Ed Weird.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
That's
It's
like
supposed to be
German.
it's supposed to be a play on my name, Angel Eduardo, Strangel Ed Weirdo.
There we
Oh,
go.
there-
Twitter limits me by one character, so it's not quite right.
There we go. Everybody follow Angel Eduardo. Hold on, I gotta scroll this thing. That's the
Now,
problem.
Josh, can you stay
yeah.
for super chats? I think a few of them were directed at you. So
Yeah, as long as all that money comes to me, sure.
Well, we did have one particular amount of money from $50. We got $50 today. Can you believe it, Angel?
Wow, that's good.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and that is actually from a supporter of Josh's. So I'm going to read it out loud right now as soon as I bring in the.
She's spending a lot of money, by the way. I mean, because she sent me like a very nice amount today, and I'm blushing. I am
Wow.
blushing.
So you know who this is.
I do. I mean, I have a feeling because if you're
Okay,
saying
so
it's
it's
because of me, and
MJ May, who says
Yeah.
follow Josh on
What's
Patreon
the
and.
equivalent of a female?
Wait, hold on. I'm
simp?
doing a thing. Gio, I'm
Oh,
doing a
sorry.
thing. Follow Josh on Patreon and censored.tv. So that's the thing that Gavin McGinnis is doing, right?
Yeah, I do a live show on there on Saturdays, and I mean it's like the same show I do during the week, but for some reason he hired me. I mean, which is cool because like I do the show on Patreon also. But
Excellent.
Nothing better than getting paid for what you would have been doing anyway.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great.
Is Soph still on there?
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah,
nice,
she is.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we definitely, like, regardless of whatever we think of any content or wherever we think of Gavin McGinnis, it's very important to support independent creators out there who, get censored by the system. So there we go. So, Angel, once again, brother, thank you so much for coming in, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Let's keep in touch about the thing. I was speaking before with Brent, and Brent is doing a thing with you with the New York City arts thing, and I'm really excited to be a part of that as well. So let us go far. All right, Angel.
All right, man. Take
Take care, brother.
Thank you.
So let's read the super chats right now, and let me also adjust the screen. So as you guys know, whenever I have this new setup here, so whenever people exit, I have to realign my chakras. I have to realign the way that the screen looks so that everything works out. Here we go. And everybody subscribe right now, breaktherules.tv, and also btr.ninja. If you go to btr.ninja, that is kind of like a Linktree thing. So on btr.ninja, you get to see all the various links to all the platforms that BTR is on, whether it's Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, Twitter, Minds, DLive, which we're streaming on right now, Twitch, which we're still on. I don't know how BTR is still on Twitch, but still on Twitch. Yeah, so there we go. But anyway, let's go back to Josh. Josh, I wanted to also
Yes.
ask you something as completely different. I
Sure.
believe I saw photos of you with Paris Hilton when I
God damn it.
Google image search. What's that about? I would be amiss if I did not ask.
All right, I'm 35. I've had like 5 lives already. So if something happens tomorrow, I almost got in a fight today with a man with 1 leg. I'm not joking. That did happen.
Zach Gallen.
The thing is okay. I was in a restaurant picking up food, and everything in Costa Rica is outdoors. And there's this guy yelling from a bicycle, and he's yelling at the people in Spanish, like, "I just want meat. Give me meat. I want meat." And he's yelling, and it's like right in my ear because everything's like, it's outside. Everything's outdoors. And I turn around. I'm like, "Shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up," in English. And then he got really mad and he hopped off his bike. I'm like, "Oh shit, I didn't realize he had 1 leg." So I was thrown off. And then he had something in his hand. I wasn't sure what weapon. It could have been a knife or whatever. And then before we got into it, the owner of the restaurant just came out rushing. So I was ready to die. Even though I have a 1-year-old, I was ready to die, right? You know, because I'm going to stand up for myself and for the women serving me food, because I'm not a sexist. And I would have been fine because I've lived 5 lives. In my teens, I hung out with Paris Hilton and flew all over the world because my family had a fragrance company and we launched her fragrance, and that was that was my life, you know, for a few years. And I still know her. I actually texted.
Is it all right if I share the picture from the image results?
Share it. It's on Google. Share it.
Right.
I'm aging like fine wine, by the way. I texted her recently, and I saw she saw it. She didn't respond. It was because in October she posted a picture with her and Adam Schiff, and I texted her. I'm like, "You know, he's a pedophile, right?" And then she saw it. She didn't write back, but so I still know her and all that. But
wait, which Adam Schiff is this?
The congressman who
not
tried
The Economist.
Trump.
Allegedly, we got to
guy.
say
That guy was
allegedly. We don't want to be.
such a-
We don't want to
oh
be.
my God,
We don't want to be sued.
I
But,
like how Tucker like roasts him every night. That's amazing.
Let's see if I.
No,
can
isn't
find
the Economist Peter Schiff?
Sorry, yeah, I keep getting confused. Yeah, Economist
Yeah.
Peter
Yeah.
Schiff. Yeah.
Here's the picture,
Look,
by the way.
There's baby me. I'm 18.
Look at that.
Oh,
The picture behind us is of me and her because I was in an ad with her. My dad decided to put me in an ad with her, and I did it. And people thought we were dating, and we weren't. Look at baby me, and then look at me now.
Still as handsome as ever. So
Aging very well. So yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing, you know, everything that Angel was saying, I'm like, yeah, I kind of used to believe that, and then I kind of grew out of that. Like I've been fairly liberal in my life. I mean, relative to how I am, I'm pretty much an extremist. I'm pretty much super far right now. But I used to believe in these things. I used to believe in all of this, and it just
I don't think you're far right, because look, you still have the principle of like you
he's
want
on
people.
Gavin's network.
You want people to live, you know, in a nice way and free, and not discriminate against people based on things they have no control over. You can agree on these things. For you, it's more of a question of how we can maintain a lot of these things. That's more of the.
Absolutely. When I say I'm far right, I'm like kind of in jest. Like I'm a racist in that word is thrown around so much it has lost its meaning. So sure, I'm a racist. I talk about race. I talk about the differences of races because they do exist. Like that's the thing. I'm not an idealist with all these things, and I did used to believe in what a lot of what he was talking about. So I can see both sides, and I'm like, yeah, but that side's wrong. I used to believe in it. I immersed myself in it. It's a little bit idealistic, and it's just, you know, like the zooming out and saying we're all a human race. Yeah, I'm a Jew. Drop me off in the most Muslim country and see how I do.
Yes.
See how that goes for me.
But Josh, that is still something that I would say is not a question of race. I would disagree on those things just because if we're talking about culture, like in Israel, for example,
No, I know.
you would have Arabs, Arab Jews, and so on and so forth.
No, absolutely. But like, it's just an example of like that we're all so completely different. And some of it is because of race, and some of it is because of culture. But to say that neither play a part, or to even say race doesn't play a part, that's all naive. I mean, in my opinion, it's naive. But that doesn't mean I think we should hate people for being different races or anything. But we are different. So I used to believe in all of that. I lived in Hollywood. I was in LA for 11 years. I know celebrities. They're mostly stupid. Like, I mean, Not Paris is actually smart, but I know other celebrities who
She
are
would
kind
be
of
a
stupid.
fascinating conversation, like
Yeah.
based on her documentary, because I think she really knows what it's like to be like almost like a weird like simulation in some ways, like your
She
whole life.
invented the whole world we live in today. She invented.
Pretty much,
Influencers
yeah.
stems from her. She made Kardashian. I was in a hotel room one time. I woke up in Paris's hotel room one time.
Whoa.
No, like it was big. It was so big that I was in the downstairs room of her hotel room. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Yeah,
And I woke up and I see this girl packing a suitcase, and it was Kim Kardashian packing Paris's shit because she had 30 suitcases, and Kim Kardashian
she was the young
her,
girl. Yeah.
she was her assistant. Like
Yeah.
she literally emulated what Paris Hilton invented and then made her whole family famous or more famous. They were famous kind of in
The OJ.
Yeah, exactly. But like she really took them to the next level because she copied Paris Hilton. Paris Hilton invented what we're experiencing today, which is a massive disaster. Like it was maybe fine for her, but it's not fine when you apply it to the whole world of children. Like when you apply it to all of the youth, it's not good.
But I wouldn't blame Paris. I would see Paris as
Oh,
being
no,
somebody
she
who
just-
filled a particular gap that would have
Yeah.
been filled by somebody else.
Oh no, I'm not
Right,
blaming
right.
her. Yeah, no, I'm not blaming her. It was bound to. If it wasn't her, it was gonna be someone else. But she was the first.
And does she ever look back on it and look back on it in a similar kind of detached way that you're talking about it as well? Like seeing like all these various things that are occurring right now and.
I don't think so because first of all, she's like a very nice, optimistic person, but also she's still living that life. I mean, she's glued to her phone. But the thing is, because she has good work ethic. I mean, this is essentially her job. But can you say the same for the average Zoomer? It's not your job. Stop trying to live that and emulate that. Like it's like buying lottery tickets and thinking one day I'm just going to win the lottery. No, you're not. It's a tax on you. You're probably poor. It's a tax on you.
Sure, I could see that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to where we go from here, I think we had a very interesting discussion. Despite any of the differences between you and Angel, I think the core, and that's the important thing, the core remains. If we were speaking to somebody who was the usual terms, leftist, SJW, whatever.
Yeah, I barely ever say those.
Yes, exactly. But, it's like the beating of dead horse terms. But, what else am I going to say? But if we were to well, first of all, we wouldn't because they wouldn't ever come on. That's number one. And number two, if they would come on, then they'd organize some kind of raid or whatever. Like I got one time when we had this tanky on. You know what a tanky is, right?
No.
A tanky is a communist who was specifically infatuated with the USSR and the third world hellholes, like all of the third world is basically, like Venezuela and things like that. And when I had her on and I was criticizing her, some friend of hers got my family's number and called my family up and was threatening them, So it's like that is like a completely different level of humanity, which is why I agree with Angel in that we can reach out to people who are capable of being reached out to. And I think there are plenty of people like that, more people than this loud minority. But for the people who are in that minority, I don't know what to say. I mean, that's why I think there has to be a certain amount of authority and order. There has to be a certain amount of Shiva, if you're familiar with the statue of Shiva dancing, doing the cosmic dance. Yeah. But on Shiva's foot is this dwarf of ignorance. And this dwarf of ignorance is immortal. The dwarf cannot die, but the dwarf can only be suppressed by having Shiva stomp on the dwarf with its foot while Shiva's dancing the cosmic dance. So I see that as an analogy to fighting against the various, ill-natured situations in our cosmos that I don't think we're capable of fully annihilating those tendencies, but we can stomp on them and keep them stomped to a certain extent so that our children can grow without having, without being affected to that much of extent by them.
That's the key word, our children. So as much as I black pill, without black pills, you can't have white pills and vice versa. So just because things are looking bad, and by the way, they are. I mean, really, how could you not say they're bad? This notion that we're living in the greatest time in human history is, in my opinion, childish. I used to believe that, and I used to repeat those talking points. There was a book Michael Shermer wrote I forget what it's called. And I read it, and I'm like, and it basically, that was the point. Like, oh, we live in the best time in human history. No, we don't. There's some things that are good. A lot of things aren't good. And the reason I can say that with quite certainty is because this tech that we have, this technology that we have, has so completely engulfed us. It didn't exist to the extent that it does now. We've entered a new era, and we don't know what to do with it. You know, so I do think we're living in a bad time, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have a good life or try to have a good life, because you can completely separate the two things. I mean, again, I partly moved out here because my parents are here, and my kid is their first grandkid, but also because I knew I needed to get out of LA anyways. So I was gonna go to Montana because I do love the United States. As bad as things are, there's still really good places. I was gonna go to Montana, and I put that off for a few years to be here with my family. But again, the things that you could do are have a stake in the future. A lot of people like to philosophize and talk about what we need to do, and it's like, you know, intellectualize everything, and it's like very smart, and but at the end of the day, you're kind of, you know, a lot of people are LARPing. Have a stake in the future. Like, make it a point to, if you don't have a relationship, make it a point to be in a relationship, a meaningful relationship. Stop sleeping around. Make it a point to say, you know what, I'm going to have kids. Not only one kid, because mathematically that makes 0 sense. 2 plus 2 people equals 1 is not good for the world. It needs to be 3 minimum or something. Make it a point to have kids. Make it a point to have a stake in the future, and then you know, and then we can intellectualize things. I don't know, but I think that you can think that things are going to shit, and at the same time, try to make things good and have the best life possible, you know, and you do that by experiencing what humanity has to offer. And that goes back to what I was saying with people are completely detached from nature. Like, making a baby is as natural as things can get. And that's like one of the best examples.
Well, we're so detached from nature, we fetishize those things. Like, pornography has managed to fetishize human reproduction now. So
yeah, and that's what I was saying earlier. I mean, that's that you know, I didn't want to go down that wormhole of talking about porn, but that's an example. That's an example that like was kind of poo-pooed, you know. I mean, slightly by Angel, and it's like, it's a massive problem. And then if you look at that problem, and then you look at weed, and then you look at video games, like, those, everything is fine, right, in moderation. But it seems to me like humans cannot do moderation. Like, it seems to me like
human-based people, they like have this guttural attachment to their video, like, oh no, we can't insult video games. But yeah,
I'm fine with it if it's like a small part of your life. But for a lot of people, it's not.
Yeah,
we're like, for TikTok is a good example. TikTok is a good example. TikTok is designed to be, it's warfare against the youth of the United States
by the Chinese government.
By the Chinese government. So we are at war with China. It's a different kind of war that never existed before, and we are losing, and no one's talking about it. And TikTok is a good example. Literally everything today that's geared towards children is an attack on the fire that they have in their belly. It's meant to extinguish that fire, especially for young men and young boys. And that's what's happening today, and it's a massive problem. How the fuck can we have a future if we don't have the youth participating in it or wanting to participate in it? We don't have a future. And not only that, but like the solution that many people on both sides, you know, politicians, is we need to import more people. What are you talking about?
Americans.
What about the kids we have here? Why aren't we like Hungary that's encouraging, in Poland, encouraging the citizens to have babies? It's true.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love
Lord,
steamed
what's happening?
hams. It's steamed hams.
And one of the worst things I also find with these TikTok generations is that there's this roboticization of people of different generations. So when I say TikTok generation, I mean they could be people who are even boomers, but they act like fucking robots. You know, the way that they move around, the way that I don't know, it's difficult to describe. The worst one was this horrible thing where this mother whose daughter died, she just started doing like an infant daughter died. She started doing a dance right in front of the corpse. I mean, that is like otherworldly. That is.
That video.
That is not human. I mean, what is that?
my
I don't
God.
know. That's not the way a human being acts. So there is some kind of a mind virus there, which again makes me think that most people do need a structure. But the most important thing here to keep in mind, where I'm more on Angel's side here, I think, could be wrong, but it's that whenever we think of authoritarian solutions to moral problems, to problems of attention, to problems of the ones that we were listing here, the cure can be worse than the disease. If we're talking about a technologically advanced time where if you have a top-down government system where even if with the best of intentions somebody comes around to become a dictator of that whole thing, you have technology, you have instant communication, you have a lot of things that could be used to do man-made horrors beyond your wildest dreams.
Yeah, but
that would pale in compare. What right now is pales in comparison, I think, to the potential there.
I'll agree with that, but for instance, again, let's just point back to the United States when we were a little bit more prude. We used to have laws against what's it called, like pornography, but what was the word, like indecent?
Blue laws?
Huh?
Blue law? Oh no, that's drinking.
What do they call it? Decency laws?
Yeah, I forget the word, but the point is that pornography wasn't really protected under free speech because it's not speech. Right. And for people to be like, oh, that's speech. What are you talking? Like, what ideas? Oh my God, interesting. What ideas are coming from that? Is there like discourse? What's happening there? It's not speech. But like, for instance, if I was supreme ruler and if I was president, those would be two different things, right? So if I was president, I would try to make it where it would be basically impossible to watch porn. I wouldn't make it illegal, but I would make it very hard for people to have access to it, because that's how it actually used to be. It used to be very hard to have access to it. And
how would you do that? Can you break it down?
I'll give you an example, something I thought about because I've been thinking about this. You know how to access a porn website, you just have to say, I was born in 10/7/86. That's my birthday. And then enter. So there's really nothing. It's fake. Like it's a fake thing. Maybe to enter a porn site, maybe type in your social security number. Maybe like, would you want them to have access to that? I don't know. But like, if you want access, maybe that's what you have to type in as an example, like something that you don't really want to expose to people who you don't trust. Well, why don't you trust them? They're just good people trying to make a business. So maybe something like that.
Yeah, but you may be underestimating the amount of people that would actually do that, and then we have a situation
No, you're
where...
missing the point. You're missing the point. A 12-year-old won't be able to go on there.
No, I get that. I'm not talking about 12-year-olds, though, right now.
No, I know, but the thing is what we have today, any 12-year-olds can just go on there.
Sure. No, I agree with you there.
I wouldn't ban porn because I wouldn't be allowed to.
You gotta follow.
It would be anti-Semitic.
you gotta follow my point here through. I'm not talking about the 12-year-olds right now. I'm specifically talking about the dumbasses that would be gullible enough to give over their social to people who are, like in the NSA or whatever. And the question then happens: what are the unintended consequences of people who have that amount of power over people having access to that particular data? Does that
maybe the porn websites won't actually have access to that, but still you're putting it out there. You know what I mean? Like maybe they won't have like you type in your credit card information, they don't see your specific credit card. You know what I mean? Like if you're buying something, like they don't have your full number or anything, but still you're like, I use Amazon because, I mean, even though it's evil, I trust that they won't leak my information or buy things without me knowing. I don't know what you're laughing at, but
the chat. Don't worry about it.
But yeah, I mean, so it's not, maybe they wouldn't have access to it, the porn companies specifically, but also I'd maybe go after the porn companies because they are involved in human trafficking, which is illegal. They are involved in child sex trafficking, which is illegal. They're involved in a lot of things, but for some reason, I don't know why. Maybe again because it is a weapon like TikTok, and they for some reason want to corrupt the youth and totally demolish them because they weren't aborted as babies. Who knows? I would make it very hard for them to operate. I wouldn't ban it, but I would make it very hard to operate. Now, if I was supreme ruler, I would ban it and punish. It would be punishable by death. But that's if I was an authoritarian, which I'm not.
Well, certainly, like certain types of pornography have to be banned right away, even if it's like the way they get around it is kind of like. Well, I don't know. I don't want to name
Well,
things,
look, on
but
the plus side, getting around it means that whoever it is that's that engaged and that curious about it will at least learn programming. Will at least have a new skill that they will acquire along.
Hey, you had to work to have porn back in the day.
Exactly, yes. I mean, same thing with like torrenting and all these various things. They teach people lessons that they could then use to. Anyway, so Super Iron Bob says $5. And by the way, all the people who are wondering who Super Iron Bob is one of the best people ever. Super Iron Bob is a great patron. He's been with Break the Rules from the start.
Yeah,
and
I
really
love
appreciate
Super Iron Bob, and I just met him.
There we go. That's what it's all about. $5. This is the solution in the UK. Either need a credit card or a one-time card purchased at a local shop that check your ID. So again, if I were to go to like the unintended consequences, yada yada route,
imagine being a coomer having to like go to the fucking shop
yes, exactly,
and be like, can I get?
I would say that I am not in favor of the government having that much access to anything related to just like what people do and spying and
it
yada,
wouldn't
yada,
be the
yada.
government. It wouldn't be they wouldn't have access to it. But I mean, but don't they have your social security number to begin with? But that's besides the point. Whatever.
Yeah.
But also social security shouldn't exist.
Well, Lev, are you reading super chats in order or no?
I'm going to read the super chats right now. I just wanted to do a special shout out to Super Iron Bob because it's Super Iron Bob.
Yeah, why do we need social security? What's the logic? Is that just
because the stock market crashed in the 20s and then something and then the safety net, which is a scam. It's a pyramid scheme. You put more money than you get. Blah 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 blah. Should we blast through this? I have to help with the baby.
Oh yes, no problem at all. Here we go.
Go.
Okay,
but I will stay. I'll stay. Let's bang it out. Let's go.
Okay, here we go.
It's particularly spicy, actually.
Okay, so hold on. What is going on here? See, the moment that I okay, here we go. Streamlabs dashboard. I didn't have that thing up. I had the vegetable oil thing up. Oh, and now there's a pop-up. Okay, here we go. Here we go, everybody. All right. Everybody subscribe, by the way. Here we go. So
to me, patreon.com/wrongop.
And then you can become a patron of Break the Rules, patreon.com/Break the Rules.
And then wrongop.
And then Break the Rules again. Okay, Alex Redmond.
What's in the links? And all of your links are there. So let's plow through this left.
Okay. Oh God, we're not going to be able to plow through this one. Alex Redmond, €4.99. What's Josh's take on why Jewish people tend to lean to the left as a Jewish conservative?
We
had this conversation backstage.
We spoke about that today. I think it has to do with Jewish people inherently have high IQ. I think it stems from what the religion was founded on. It's a very, very hard religion to follow. You do have to learn all the time. And like as opposed to in the beginning of Christianity, only the priest really read. Like Judaism's the opposite. Judaism is the hard version of Christianity. And I think that it stems from that. Our muscles, our brain muscles are very strong. And I think that it's kind of like how I think like women are inherently nurturers. That's just how they're wired more so than men. And I think that like with Jewish people, we have many, many years of just being smarter than most people. And I think that with that power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
And I think that we kind of like there's a lot of good Jews which don't get noticed because bad things overshadow good things. And then there's a lot of bad Jews who do pretty much run all industries. Like they do run Hollywood, they do run the porn industry.
This is a mega red pill right now.
But they do. They control media, they control all these things, but it's not because we have like some secret meeting, which I wish we did and I wish I was a part of and I wish they would give me money, but they don't. If my uncle's a Zionist and that whole family canceled me because I married a non-Jew, and they're friends with all the politicians, but I don't get invites. So like I wish that, I mean, so yes, Jews do run certain things, but I think it's because we had a head start, and I think it has to do with
because the higher IQ, like they have a higher IQ in certain particular legalistic things, or they have a very high verbal and literary IQ. Do you think that's because they can entertain
mathematical too?
Mathematical as well, yes.
Yeah.
Do you think that they can entertain certain abstract concepts that are very in tune with like modern progressivism? Do you think that's
maybe I don't, but that's the thing. Like, I don't even know if they believe in it. Like, Seth Rogen is a really good example. Like,
he doesn't believe in anything, I don't think.
No, but that's my point. Like, you know, he says a lot of things that make no sense at all. And he always says how happy he is with his decisions. Usually when people are happy, they don't say how happy they are all the time. Like it's like the girl who's 37 and single, and she's happy that she's single and never gonna have
flourishing.
a family. Huh?
Like manicured, flourishing, live, laugh, love. So,
yeah, it's like oh, you have to convince yourself that you're smart. I don't know if they even believe in these things. But we were talking about this earlier, Lev and I, that these are the most anti-Semitic people. That Jews who complain about anti-Semitism, look in the fucking mirror. It's Jews. It's Jews. Jews hate each other so much.
I feel like I shouldn't be a part of this conversation.
No, but Gio,
no,
it's very funny that this is the same things that I was saying all the time. Yet when Josh says it, all of a sudden you're like, "Yay, more!"
He's based.
He's based. Based in red pill.
Because I'm doing it with humor. I don't know if you use humor. You have to use humor to drive your point home.
Yeah, that is a good quality of the Jewish community as well, being able to use humor, which is a sign of high intelligence. But I would say though, there are people out there like Seth Rogen who are Jews who I'd say are. Yeah, they're not that bright. That's the other thing. I think there's a confusion in him, maybe, and a sense of pretending to be happy.
He can entertain.
Yes, exactly. And I think
a
a lot of Jewish people are also like that, as are most people. So even among people who are going to be the best educated and have a better family structure, they're still mostly going to be midwits at best. Midwits at best, and if we're talking about the Jewish community, midwits at worst. Because,
wait, back to midwits for a second. I mean, again, that goes back with how idealistic, in my opinion, Angel was about things. I mean, like, most people are midwits. Most people aren't talented. Think about it like this. You know how college is oversaturated? So is everything. So is music. You know how much music how much good music comes out now? Very little is good, as opposed to, and there's a million musicians because there's the technology to become one, as opposed to, I don't know, let's go back to Mozart's day when very few people can get into that, and Mozart was able to become known to the whole world, and to this day still, because he was a musical prodigy, and nothing was oversaturating the market, and boom, we had Mozart. We don't have any of those things anymore, in my opinion. We don't have like Leonardo da Vinci's, we don't have Mozart's or Beethoven's, we don't have Michelangelo's or any of these people anymore, because they exist, but do you know about them?
Here's what we do have. Yeah. We have
most people are midwits.
We have Gregory Pellerman. Have you heard of Gregory Pellerman by any chance?
Record companies
is he a SuperChat guy? Let's read it.
No, I wish. No, he is a Russian Jewish mathematician, who was known for his contributions to the fields of geometric analysis, Riemann geometry, and geometric topology. This dude,
none of those things are real.
He won. Hold on.
I don't believe it's math isn't real.
He won the Clay Millennium Prize for his resolution of the Poincare conjecture. Sure, you could say
the guy that lives in like a one-room apartment.
Yes, he lives in a one-room apartment with his mom, with a bunch of cockroaches everywhere. But
he refuses to take the prize money.
Yes,
he's
but
like
this dude's brain is on a whole other level compared to us mere mortals. And the reason why I say this is I think these people, they do exist and they are alive. I mean, look at, for example, a lot of the chess masters. A lot of them happen to be Jewish too. The chess grandmasters. It's, to me, again, the sign of whenever anybody's going to get a modicum of success at doing something better than other people, the attention is going to be paid the most to the bad people who do the same thing. If you're somebody who is successful, then as a group, you're going to find people who are just successful but are doing bad shit, and you're going to lump everybody in with those people. And that's a big problem, and I'm happy that there are people out there who are going away from that whole system that we're in. But I think the reason why it's difficult for a lot of Jewish people, especially in the cities, to do so, even if they want to, is because I think they're scared. I think they're scared of the lefties coming after them, coming after their career, so they just have to abide by whatever it is considered to be right thing.
Yeah. That's all I'm going to say, yeah.
Yeah, what are you going to do? I mean, the only thing you can do is keep having conversations like this. My message to a lot of the Jewish people who are going to be watching this right now is join me in advocating for freedom of expression, no censorship when it comes to getting your point across, and
except
support.
porn.
Well, again, where we could, you know what I got to do? I got to team you up with Styx Heckenhammer 666 to have the conversation about porn.
Oh,
That's
that guy.
That guy. That's gonna be spicy. No, Styx is cool. So anyway, let's see about doing that later on in the future. But right now, just final super chat. See this. I knew that this question was going to take up the entirety. So anyway, back here we get a. Sorry, I know that you got to go to the kids right now. My apologies.
Let's just bang the questions out.
Yeah, bang the questions out. Here we go. Okay, Streamlabs. Okay, dashboard. All right, bang the questions out, one after the other. Super chat from... Hold on, everybody. Here it is. Okay, super chat from Super Iron Bob. $5. Don't deny inertia. Whipping a community back and forth till it has no definition is evil and destructive, much like calcification. So another Super Iron Bob, $5. We said this one about the acculturization part of the submission part of yourself so you can be part of the community. Refusing to compromise is being a porcupine. And last, Super Iron Bob, $5. This is the solution in the UK. Okay, so we said that one already. Those are all the super chats. One last thing before we go, I want to say, you see King of the Chat or Queen of the Chat. I know, is MJ May he or she? She. So MJ May, queen of this chat, and she'll remain queen of the chat until one of you people puts up more than $49.99 smackaroos, and then you will become king or queen of the chat. So that is for you to do. Nice. And final plugs, Josh, before we go, where can people find you once again?
So they can see my name right there, right? Josh Lekach.
Yes.
I say Lekach, but whatever. That's my handle on everything, on like Twitter, at Josh Lekach, on Instagram, and but the most important thing is the Patreon, patreon.com/WrongOP. If you could put the link up there.
Doing it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I do 2 to 3 shows a week, and then I do my live show on Saturdays on censored.tv. I interviewed Sam Hyde again last week, and I'm going to have that up in about a month because it was done like this, like FaceTime, and I know that with him, I want things to be special. I interviewed him a year and a half ago. I flew out to Rhode Island, to interview him, and this time he was nice enough to do it like this. So I was like, okay, I'm going to put the money. I hired an animator, going to put animation throughout it, and Mike Ma is going to put some footage throughout it. And nice. It's gonna be a good one. That's gonna be on the Patreon as well. It's and also we didn't really even talk politics or anything like that. We pretty much talked about finances and what young people should do to make money and all that. So it's pretty cool.
Excellent.
Mike Ma did the laser cut engraving. I could have done my own wood cuts, but he did the laser cut engraving for my good friend of the show, actually, Zero HP Lovecraft's book.
Oh yeah. I put them together. Yeah, I linked them up.
Nice.
Yeah,
linking them up, just like Spot 'em Got 'em and Pooh Shiesty.
We have to get ZHP on again, but he's a regular.
No, he's coming on about the BAP question. That is happening, I believe. We're
actually doing that.
Yeah, we're actually doing that. Of course,
no!
He signed on. He signed on. So it's all good for him.
Good, he could be the bullet magnet.
Yeah.
For that
Okay.
one.
Final thing. Since we were talking about engravings, I want to share this with you
by the way,
right now.
speaking of Styx, you mentioned Styx. Congratulations to Styx on his first child. His wife, our philosophy cat. Is that his wife?
No.
Who is his wife?
No. Oh yeah.
Cat.
Yeah. I think yes. Maybe.
Is it philosophy cat? No, it's someone else. His wife is pregnant. So congratulations to
Congratulations to Six. Yes, new father. And by the way, here you see these magnets over here, Josh. So
They're-
my father makes these magnets. He is a great artist, and you can get these magnets if you become a $20 patron of Break the Rules, patreon.com/Break the Rules. If you become a $5 patron, you are going to get MP3s of the episodes after they come out. You are going to get the status on the Discord to allow you to post images, much like I'm posting images right now, so people can see your images in the chat. So all that nice stuff. And if you become a $30 patron, you are going to get a beautiful print from Giovanni Pennacchietti. Here is the print. You can see it in upload failed. See this happen sometimes. Here, I'm going to clear it one more time, and we are going to be, here we go, processing. Here we go. Here is what the print looks like. Here it is in action. So, Josh, you could see it as well. Geo
Very cool.
doing this stuff. This is from the TFW No GF series. Here we go. Here is the print done. And finally,
I like that.
Excellent. Yeah. And finally, if you
so
become
Wojaks hugging each other.
Yes. And finally, if
in
you
their
become
loneliness and their inceldom.
Yes.
So...
well, we're lonely no more. And finally,
I regret calling it that because of the terrible people. Well, except for
hold on. We're gonna have
a few terrible people affiliated with that movie.
Well,
like one thinker of irony is.
Alex Lee Moyer.
We're gonna
should
have
be
Alex
coming
Lee
in.
Moyer on.
Yeah.
I know her. We're good. Yeah. Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, that's happening. And Ariel Pink is coming back on too with.
I had him on my show too. Yeah.
Nice.
I know Ariel.
Yeah, there we go.
He's a great. We did 3
You're
hours.
poaching all my guests.
We're gonna have Sam Hyde on one day, hopefully.
Shut the fuck up. Let me add one thing.
3 hours with Ariel. It was amazing. One of the best.
You forgot to mention. Sorry, but with the magnets, you forgot to mention that your father makes you those, and then you take them from him and then sell them. He makes them for you. You sell them without him knowing. You give him none of the money, which is great son, but that's what you do.
There's no helping. But here, this is the dragon. Yeah, so this is the Styx dragon that I made for Styx. So Styx is going to pick it up when he comes back to the United States. But you can have a similar Styx dragon if you become a $50 tier patron if you're a fan of Styx. Or you can have a custom magnet, custom wooden magnet, whatever design you want. It shall be done by my incredibly talented father, as well as having another Bob Ross style painting from Giovanni Pennacchietti, as well as having the Warhammer 40K figures from Jules P. Hamilton, as well as having a lot of love from us for you being a part of it. Yes, exactly.
I just want to mention one thing for the top tier in my Patreon. If you give me $1,000 a month, I will give you the last leg of that guy I was going to get in a fight with today. I'm going to find him. I'm going to rip off his leg, and I'll send it to you for the $1,000 tier a month. That's all I can offer you. I don't have any skills of magic dragons and magnets and all that, but that's what I can give you.
If we have $1,000 patron, Lev, the $1,000 patron can come live in my room here with me. That'll be interesting.
Sounds horrible. That's
well, it's
nice. Well, this is it. This is the end. This is the end of the stream. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe, follow Josh, follow Gio. Also follow me. Take care, everybody. Have a good night. Mwah. Good night, everybody.
Good.